The rifle barrel gleamed cold in the autumn sun as Samuel Hayes stood between Emma and the men who'd come to claim her. "This woman is under my protection now." His voice cut through the tension like thunder. Behind him, a desperate mother clutched her starving child, facing an impossible choice: marry a stranger or face the wolves of her dead husband's past. Some say the strongest bonds are forged, not in comfort, but in the crucible of survival. I'm here to tell you about a love that began not with romance, but with courage. Stay with me until the end of this story, and don't forget to comment your city below. I'd love to know how far this tale has traveled. The autumn wind carried more than just dead leaves through the streets of Cedar Ridge that October morning. It carried desperation, whispered prayers, and the kind of bone-deep hunger that made proud women do things they'd never imagined. Emma Caldwell sat on the rough wooden steps outside Morrison's General Store, her arms wrapped around 7-year-old Lucy, trying to shield her daughter from more than just the cold. 3 days. That's how long it had been since either of them had eaten anything more substantial than the watered-down broth Mrs. Peterson had secretly left on their doorstep before her husband found out and forbade any more charity to that widow woman. 3 days of watching Lucy's bright eyes grow dimmer, of hearing her small stomach growl in the night while trying to muffle the sound against her mother's chest. "Mama," Lucy whispered, her voice so faint it nearly got lost in the wind. "My tummy hurts again." Emma's heart shattered a little more, if such a thing were possible. She'd already broken it so many times since Thomas died 6 months ago, leaving them with nothing but debts and the harsh judgment of a town that had no patience for a woman without a man's protection. "I know, sweetheart," Emma murmured into her daughter's dark hair, the same shade as her late father's. "Just rest a little. Mama's thinking." But thinking hadn't put food in their bellies. Thinking hadn't kept the landlord from evicting them last week. Thinking hadn't stopped the local men from looking at her with that particular combination of pity and calculation, wondering if desperation had finally made her willing to trade the only thing she had left for bread. The morning sun climbed higher, and the good people of Cedar Ridge went about their business, stepping around the woman and child on the steps like they were merely another pile of autumn debris. Emma had stopped feeling the sting of their averted gazes weeks ago. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford, though she clung to its tatters like a worn coat. That's when she saw him. Samuel Hayes moved through the crowd like a ship through water. People simply parted before him without conscious thought. He was tall, perhaps 6 feet and 2 inches, with the kind of broad shoulders that came from years of working the land, rather than any desire for physical impression. His face was weathered, but not old, maybe 35 to her 26, with deep lines around gray eyes that spoke of both laughter and loss. He wore the practical clothes of a rancher, worn leather boots, dark trousers, and a coat that had seen better years but was clean and well-mended. Emma had seen him in town before, though they'd never spoken. She knew what everyone knew. Samuel Hayes owned the Double H Ranch, 15 miles outside town. He was a widower of 2 years, and he had a daughter about Lucy's age. The gossips said he was fair but distant, a man who paid his debts and expected others to do the same, who attended church but sat in the back row and left before the social hour. She expected him to walk past like all the others. Instead, he stopped. Not the hesitant pause of someone considering charity, not the calculating stop of a man seeing opportunity. He simply stopped, his gray eyes taking in the scene before him with an intensity that made Emma want to simultaneously straighten her spine and disappear into the wooden steps. "Ma'am," he said, tipping his worn hat. His voice was deep, roughened by wind and weather. "Your little girl looks cold." Emma's arms tightened around Lucy instinctively. "We're fine, thank you." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, especially when Lucy shivered against her, undermining her words with the honesty of a child's body. Samuel's eyes moved from Emma to Lucy, and something shifted in his expression. Not pity. Emma had learned to recognize pity in all its forms. This was something else, something that looked almost like recognition. "When's the last time she ate?" The question was direct, without cushioning, but somehow not unkind. Emma's pride flared the last ember in a dying fire. "That's not your concern, Mr. Hayes." "Samuel, sir," he corrected. Then did something unexpected. He He sat down on the steps, not close enough to crowd them, but near enough that she could see the weariness in his own eyes. And you're right, it's not my concern. But I'm making it my concern anyway. Why? The word escaped before Emma could stop it, raw and suspicious. Samuel was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant as he watched a wagon rumble past. My Mary died 2 years ago. Fever took her in 3 days. Left me with Rose, she's 8 now. For weeks after, I couldn't... He paused, seeming to search for words. I couldn't make myself care about eating. Forgot mostly. It was Rose who reminded me standing in the kitchen one morning, trying to reach the bread shelf, too proud to ask for help, even though she was starving. He turned those gray eyes back to Emma, and she saw it then, the understanding that only comes from walking through the same fire. Pride's a cold comfort when your child's hungry, he said simply. Emma felt her defenses crack just slightly. What do you want from us? Nothing you're not willing to give, Samuel replied, standing and brushing off his trousers. But I'd like to make you an offer. A business proposition, you might say. Emma's guard went back up immediately. She'd heard enough business propositions from men in the past months to know what they usually entailed. I'm not that kind of woman, Mr. Hayes. I'm not that kind of man, Mrs. Caldwell. His use of her name surprised her. She hadn't told it to him. But then in a town like Cedar Ridge, everyone knew everyone's business. What I'm offering is marriage. The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. Lucy stirred against Emma's chest, whimpering softly in her sleep. You don't even know me, Emma said when she found her voice. I know enough, Samuel replied. I know you've been sitting on these steps for 3 hours and haven't asked a soul for help. I know you sold your wedding ring 2 weeks ago to buy medicine when Lucy had that cough. I know you worked at the boarding house until Mrs. Pritchard let you go because her husband complained you were too pretty to have around. Emma's cheeks burned. You've been watching us. The whole town's been watching you, ma'am. The difference is, I'm the only one doing something about it. And what makes you think I'd marry a stranger? Samuel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small leather pouch. He set it on the step beside her, the soft clink of coins audible even through the leather. I'm not asking you to decide right now. Take the get your girl a hot meal and a room for the night at Mrs. Jameson's. She's discreet. Tomorrow, if you're willing, come out to the Double H. See the place, meet Rose. If you don't like what you see, keep the money, and I won't bother you again. And if I do like what I see, then we discuss terms, Samuel said pragmatically. I need a wife and a mother for Rose. You need a home and security for Lucy. It wouldn't be a love match, but it would be honest, respectful, safe. Emma looked down at Lucy's pale face, at the dark circles under her small eyes, at the way her little hands clutched at Emma's worn dress, even in sleep. Then she looked up at Samuel Hayes, this stranger who spoke of marriage like a business contract, but whose eyes held depths of understanding she hadn't expected. Why me? She asked. There are other women in town, women without... She gestured vaguely at their situation. Other women haven't survived what you have and kept their dignity, Samuel said. Other women haven't held on to their pride even when it's costing them everything. Rose needs someone strong, someone who won't fold when things get hard. Things are already hard. They'll be different hard at the ranch, Samuel admitted. It's isolated, the work never stops, the winters are brutal, but you'll never wonder where your next meal is coming from. Lucy will have a room of her own clothes that fits schooling, and you'll have my respect and protection always. Protection. The word resonated somewhere deep in Emma's chest. When had she last felt protected? Samuel tipped his hat again. Mrs. Jameson's boarding house is 3 streets over the blue house with white shutters. She serves dinner at 6. Think about it. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. I'm not a perfect man. I've got my own shadows, my own sharp edges. But I keep my word, and I don't raise my hand to women or children. Ever. That's a promise I make to you now before anything else. Then he was gone, moving back through the crowd with that same purposeful stride, leaving Emma on the steps with a leather pouch of possibilities and the biggest decision of her life. Lucy stirred again, her eyes fluttering open. Mama, who was that man? Emma looked down at her daughter, at the trust in those innocent eyes, at the hunger she could no longer ignore. Maybe a friend, sweetheart. Maybe a friend. She picked up the leather pouch, its weight both foreign and comforting in her hand. Inside was enough money for a week's worth of meals and lodging, a fortune to someone who'd been counting pennies for months. But it was what the money represented that made her hands tremble a choice. For the first time in 6 months, she had an actual choice. "Come on, Lucy, love," she said, standing and lifting her daughter despite the protest of her own weakened body. "Let's go find Mrs. Jameson's house." "Are we going to eat, Mama?" Lucy's voice was hopeful in a way that broke Emma's heart. "Yes, sweetheart, we're going to eat." As they walked through the streets of Cedar Ridge, Emma caught sight of her reflection in a store window and barely recognized herself. When had she become so thin? When had her dress become so shapeless and gray? When had the confident young woman who'd married Thomas Caldwell for love transformed into this shadow person existing on the margins of society, Mrs. Jameson's boarding house was exactly as Samuel had described, blue, with white shutters, neat and welcoming in a modest way. The older woman who answered the door took one look at Emma and Lucy and ushered them inside without questions. "Mr. Hayes said you might be coming," Mrs. Jameson said, her voice carefully neutral. "I've got a room ready and dinner's almost on the table." The smell of beef stew and fresh bread nearly buckled Emma's knees. Lucy made a small sound, half sob and half joy, and buried her face in her mother's neck. "How much for the room?" Emma asked, though the words came out thick. "Already settled," Mrs. Jameson replied, and before Emma could protest, she added, "Mr. Hayes and I have an arrangement. He sends ranch hands to town sometimes, and they stay here. We work it out between us. No charity involved, just business." Emma recognized the lie for the kindness it was, and chose not to challenge it. Sometimes pride had to bow to necessity, and Lucy needed food more than Emma needed to stand on principle. The room was small but clean, with a bed that looked like heaven after weeks of sleeping in barns and under shop awnings. There was even a small tub and a pitcher of hot water soap and clean towels. Emma washed Lucy first, then herself, watching weeks of dirt and desperation swirl down the drain. Dinner was a revelation. Lucy ate slowly at first, as if afraid the food might disappear, then with increasing enthusiasm as her body remembered what it was like to be nourished. Emma forced herself to eat moderately, knowing too much too fast would make her sick, but every bite was a small miracle. Other boarders came and went, most ignoring them, a few casting curious glances. Emma recognized the banker's son and the telegraph operator, both of whom suddenly found their plates fascinating when she looked their way. Let them gossip, she thought. Tomorrow's judgment would come regardless. That night, lying in a real bed with Lucy warm and fed beside her, Emma stared at the ceiling and thought about Samuel Hayes. She'd married Thomas for love, and look where that had gotten her, widowed, destitute, and desperate. Thomas had been charming, full of dreams and promises. He'd swept her off her feet with poetry and passion, convinced her to leave her family in Ohio and follow him west to build a life together. But Thomas had been better at dreams than reality. He'd tried farming and failed. Tried running a store and failed. Tried prospecting and failed. Each failure had cost them money they didn't have, leading to loans they couldn't repay. His death in a mining accident had been tragic, but the tragedy had started long before in every impractical decision and borrowed dollar. Samuel Hayes didn't seem like a man of dreams and poetry. He seemed like a man of earth and iron practical decisions and kept promises. Would that be enough? Could she bind herself to a stranger for security? Could she share a life? Possibly a bed with a man she didn't love, Lucy murmured in her sleep, curling closer to Emma. And the answer became clearer. She could do anything for Lucy. She would do anything for Lucy. The next morning dawned crisp and bright. Emma dressed Lucy in her cleanest dress, still patched and worn, but at least properly washed, and put on her own best outfit, saved for church and job interviews that never resulted in work. Mrs. Jameson had breakfast waiting along with surprising news. "Mr. Hayes sent word," she said, setting down a plate of eggs and bacon that made Lucy's eyes widen. "He's sending a wagon for you at 10, if you're willing. Driver's name is Jim, been with the Double H for 15 years. He's trustworthy." Emma felt a flutter of nerves. It was one thing to consider the proposition in the abstract, another to take active steps toward it. "And if I decide not to stay, what?" "Jim will bring you right back, no questions asked," Mrs. Jameson assured her. Then dropping her voice so Lucy couldn't hear, she added, "Samuel Hayes is a good man, Mrs. Caldwell. Hard, maybe, and not much for conversation, but good. His wife Mary was my cousin. She was happy with him right up until the fever took her." "What about his daughter, Rose?" Mrs. Jameson's expression softened. "Sweet girl, but shy. Been motherless 2 years now. Samuel does his best, but a girl needs a woman's touch. She's been lonely out there." Another lonely child. Emma looked at Lucy, who was carefully eating her eggs as if they were made of gold, and felt resolve strengthen in her chest. Jim arrived precisely at 10, a weather-beaten man with kind eyes and a gentle manner with the horses. He helped Emma and Lucy into the wagon with careful courtesy, then climbed up to the driver's seat. "It's about an hour to the Double H, ma'am," he said. "Pretty drive this time of year." He was right. As Cedar Ridge fell away behind them, the landscape opened up into rolling hills painted with autumn colors. The sky stretched endless and blue with clouds like cotton tufts drifting lazily across it. Lucy, who had been subdued in town, began to perk up, pointing out birds and asking questions about the horses. "What's the ranch like?" Emma asked Jim, trying to sound casual. Jim considered the question. "It's good land. Mr. Hayes knows what he's doing with it. We run about 300 head of cattle, some horses. Got a solid house, sturdy barn, good water. It's honest work." "And Mr. Hayes? What's he like to work for?" "Fair," Jim said immediately. "Expects a day's work for a day's pay, but doesn't ask anything he wouldn't do himself. Doesn't tolerate laziness or dishonesty, but treats his men right. Been there 15 years like Mrs. Jameson said. Wouldn't stay if he wasn't worth working for." They rode in companionable silence for a while, Lucy dozing against Emma's side despite the wagon's jolting. Then Jim spoke again, seemingly casual, but with intent behind it. "Lost his wife hard, Mr. Hayes did. Loved her something fierce, but he's practical about things. Knows Rose needs a mother, knows the ranch needs a woman's hand. He's not looking for love, ma'am, if that's what you're worried about. Just someone steady, someone who won't run when winter comes and the snow's up to the windows." Emma appreciated his frankness. "I don't run, Mr. Jim." He glanced back at her with approval. "No, ma'am, I don't reckon you do." The Double H Ranch appeared as they crested a hill, and Emma's breath caught. It wasn't grand or fancy, but it was solid, real established. The main house was 2 stories of weathered wood and stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around 2 sides. Smoke rose from the chimney, suggesting warmth and life within. The barn was enormous and well-maintained with several corrals attached. She could see cattle dotting the distant hills, and closer to the house, a large vegetable garden that had been recently harvested. But what struck her most was the sense of order of everything in its proper place and properly cared for. This was a ranch run by someone who understood that success came from attention to details from daily maintenance rather than grand gestures. Samuel emerged from the barn as they pulled up, wiping his hands on a cloth. He'd shed his town coat for work clothes, but somehow looked more himself in them. A small figure shadowed him, a girl, with his same gray eyes, but softer features, presumably from her late mother. "Mrs. Caldwell." Samuel greeted her, helping her down from the wagon with careful formality. "Miss Lucy, welcome to the Double H." Lucy had woken and was staring around with wide eyes. "It's so big," she whispered. "Lots of room to run." Samuel agreed, then gestured to the girl beside him. "This is my daughter, Rose." Rose stepped forward shyly, her eyes fixed on Lucy with intense curiosity. She was wearing a neat but simple dress, her dark hair in 2 braids. "Hello," she said quietly. Lucy, never shy, smiled brightly. "I'm Lucy. You have horses." Rose's face lit up. "Oh yes, would you like to see them? Can I, Mama?" Lucy looked up at Emma pleadingly. Emma glanced at Samuel, who nodded. "Rose, why don't you show Lucy the horses?" "Stay where we can see you." The 2 girls ran off toward the nearest corral. Lucy's exhaustion forgotten in the excitement of new friendship, Emma watched them go with a mixture of relief and sadness. Lucy had been so isolated these past months with other children's parents keeping them away from the widow's daughter. "Would you like to see the house?" Samuel asked. Emma nodded, following him up the porch steps. The front door opened into a parlor that was clean but clearly lacking a woman's touch. The furniture was good quality, but arranged functionally rather than invitingly. There were no curtains, no pictures on the walls, no small touches that made a house a home. Mary was sick for a while before she passed, Samuel explained, seeming to read her thoughts. Haven't had much heart for decorating since. The kitchen was large and well-equipped with a massive stove and plenty of workspace. A dining room connected to it with a table that could seat 8. Upstairs were 4 bedrooms, one clearly Samuel's, one Rose's, with its small bed and few toys, and 2 others that stood empty. You and Lucy would have this room, Samuel said, opening the door to the largest of the empty rooms. It had a big window that looked out over the hills and space for 2 beds. I'd get proper furniture from town, of course. Whatever you needed. Emma moved to the window, watching the girls by the corral. Rose was showing Lucy how to hold her hand flat to feed a horse, both of them giggling. It was the first time she'd heard Lucy laugh in months. What exactly would you expect from me? Emma asked, not turning around. Samuel's reflection appeared in the window glass beside hers, maintaining a respectful distance. Run the house, cook clean the usual, help with Rose. She needs guidance I can't give her. Maybe help with the garden come spring. In return, you and Lucy have a home, food, clothing, everything you need. I'd put money aside for you too, in case, he paused, in case something happened to me. You wouldn't be left with nothing again. And as your wife, the words were difficult to say. What would you expect? Samuel was quiet for a long moment. Companionship maybe eventually, someone to talk to at dinner, but nothing you're not willing to give Mrs. Caldwell. I'm not a forceful man. We could have separate rooms as long as you wanted, forever, if that's what you chose. Emma finally turned to face him. Why are you doing this, really? Samuel met her gaze steadily. Because I'm lonely, and Rose is lonely, and from what I can see, you and Lucy are lonely too, because I need help, and you need help, and sometimes that's enough reason for 2 people to build something together. And because... He hesitated, then continued. Because I know what it's like to lose everything that matters. I had a chance to rebuild. You deserve the same chance. When would you want an answer? Take your time. Stay for lunch, spend the afternoon. See how it feels. If you decide against it, Jim will take you back to town whenever you're ready. No hard feelings. He left her alone in the room, and Emma stood there trying to imagine a life here. Waking up in this room, making breakfast in that kitchen, watching Lucy and Rose grow up as sisters. It wasn't the life she'd dreamed of as a young woman, but dreams had proven themselves unreliable. Lunch was simple, but filling beef sandwiches, preserved peaches, fresh milk. The girls chattered throughout the meal, already fast friends. Rose showed Lucy her doll, the only toy visible in the house, and Lucy solemnly shared the small wooden horse she'd kept hidden in her pocket, her last reminder of her father. We could play together every day, Rose said, hopefully, looking between Lucy and Emma. Maybe, Emma said gently. We'll see. After lunch, Samuel took them on a tour of the property. He showed them the barn, the chicken coop the root cellar stocked for winter. He explained the rhythms of ranch life, the daily chores, the seasonal cycles. He was matter-of-fact about the hard work involved, but also clearly proud of what he'd built. It's not an easy life, he said as they stood looking out at the cattle. But it's a good life, honest, real. Lucy had run ahead with Rose again, the 2 girls picking late wildflowers in the field. Emma watched them, seeing how Lucy bloomed in the open space, how her natural energy finally had room to express itself. Could Lucy go to school? Emma asked. There's a school in Cedar Ridge. I send Rose 3 days a week during good weather. In winter, we do lessons here. I've got books, and Mary was a teacher before we married. She left good materials. Another point in favor. Education for Lucy was something Emma worried about constantly. As the afternoon wore on, Emma found herself relaxing incrementally. Samuel didn't hover or pressure. He went about his work, letting her explore and observe. She watched him handle a spooked horse with patient gentleness, watched him explain something to one of his ranch hands with respect rather than condescension, watched him smile, really smile, when Rose brought him a flower. This wasn't a bad man. This wasn't a trap. This was simply what he'd set in arrangement that could benefit them all. As the sun began to lower toward the horizon, Samuel found her sitting on the porch watching the girls play. He sat down in the other chair, maintaining that careful distance he always seemed to measure. "Have you thought about it?" he asked. Emma had thought about little else all day. What about love? She found herself asking. Don't you want to love again? Samuel was quiet, watching the sunset paint the hills gold. I loved Mary with everything I had. When she died, I thought that part of me died too. Maybe it did, but I've learned there are different kinds of love. There's the love I have for Rose, the love I have for this land. Maybe there's a kind of love that grows from respect and partnership too. I don't know, but I know I can offer you something that might be worth more than love. I can offer you peace. Peace. The word resonated through Emma's bones. When had she last known peace? Can I have tonight to think about it? She asked. Take all the time you need, Samuel replied. Then after a pause, but Emma, I should tell you something. There are debts attached to your late husband's name. Men have been asking about you in town. Whatever you decide about my offer, be careful. Some debts follow harder than others. A chill ran through Emma despite the warm evening. She'd suspected Thomas had borrowed more than she knew about, but having it confirmed made her stomach tighten. What kind of men? The kind best avoided, Samuel said grimly. The kind that don't care about widows or orphans when collecting what they think they're owed. Another factor to consider. As if Lucy's hungry eyes weren't enough. Jim drove them back to town as darkness fell, the girls sleepy and content after their day of play. Rose had hugged Lucy goodbye, whispering something about best friends forever that made Emma's heart ache. That night back in Mrs. Jameson's boarding house, Emma sat by the window while Lucy slept. The moon was full, casting silver light over Cedar Ridge's sleeping streets. Somewhere out there 15 miles away, Samuel Hayes was probably sitting on his own porch, looking at the same moon, waiting for her answer. It wasn't romantic. There were no butterflies, no racing heart, no dreams of passion. But there was something else, a sense of rightness of pieces that could fit together if given the chance. Samuel needed what she could offer: housekeeping skills, maternal care for Rose, companionship in his isolation. She needed what he could offer: security, stability, a future for Lucy. Mama. Lucy's sleepy voice came from the bed. Are we going to live with Mr. Samuel and Rose? Emma moved to sit beside her daughter, smoothing her hair. Would you like that? Rose said we could be sisters. I've never had a sister. Lucy's eyes were hopeful in the moonlight. And Mr. Samuel seems nice. Quiet nice, not pretend nice. Out of the mouths of babes, Emma thought. Quiet nice, not pretend nice. What a perfect description of Samuel Hayes. We'll see, sweetheart. Go back to sleep. But Emma didn't sleep. She sat up thinking about choices and chances, about survival, and something more than survival. She thought about the woman she'd been young, romantic, impractical, and the woman she'd had to become hardened, desperate, calculating. Maybe Samuel's offer gave her the opportunity to become someone new. Neither the naive girl nor the desperate widow, but a woman who chose her path with clear eyes and steady purpose. When dawn came, painting the sky in pastels, Emma had made her decision. She woke Lucy, dressed them both in their best clothes again, and went downstairs to find Mrs. Jameson. I need to send word to Mr. Hayes, she said. Mrs. Jameson smiled knowingly. Jim's already here waiting in the kitchen. Samuel figured you might have an answer this morning. Emma found Jim eating breakfast, and he stood immediately when she entered. Ma'am. Tell Mr. Hayes. Emma paused, then straightened her shoulders. Tell Mr. Hayes yes, but I have conditions. Jim grinned. He figured you might. Said to bring you out to discuss terms if your answer was favorable. An hour later, Emma sat across from Samuel at his kitchen table while the girls played outside. Between them lay a piece of paper where Samuel had been writing down their agreement. Separate bedrooms until you say otherwise, he read from his notes. A monthly allowance for your personal needs. Lucy to be treated as my own daughter in all respects. If something happens to me, the ranch goes to Rose, but you have lifetime residence and a portion of the cattle sales. If something happens to you, I raise Lucy as my own. He looked up. Anything else? Emma thought carefully. I want to maintain my mother's maiden name as part of mine. Emma Caldwell Hayes, not just Emma Hayes. Samuel nodded, adding it to the list. Fair enough. My conditions are simple: partnership in running the household and raising the girls. Respect for each other, honesty. No secrets that could hurt the family. When? Emma asked. Judge Cartwright can marry us tomorrow if you're willing, Or we can give you more time to be certain. Emma thought of the men Samuel had mentioned, the ones looking for her in town. She thought of Lucy's ribs showing through her dress. She thought of Rose's lonely eyes and Samuel's quiet dignity. Tomorrow, she said. Samuel stood and offered his hand to shake as he would with any business partner. Emma took it, feeling the calluses and strength, the steadiness of his grip. Tomorrow, then, he agreed. The wedding, if it could be called that, was simple to the point of austerity. Judge Cartwright performed the ceremony in his office with Jim and Mrs. Jameson as witnesses. Emma wore her best dress, the same one she'd worn to view the ranch. Samuel wore his town clothes. The girls stood beside them, Lucy holding Emma's hand and Rose holding Samuel's. "Do you, Samuel Hayes, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Judge Cartwright intoned. "I do," Samuel said firmly. "Do you, Emma Caldwell, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Emma felt the weight of the moment, the finality of it. Then she looked down at Lucy's trusting face, over at Rose's hopeful one, and finally at Samuel's steady gray eyes. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by the state of Montana, I pronounce you man and wife." Judge Cartwright paused, seeming uncertain about the traditional ending given the circumstances. "Mr. Hayes, you may shake your bride's hand." A moment of awkwardness was broken when Rose giggled, and then they were all laughing, even Samuel, whose laugh was rusty but genuine. He did shake Emma's hand formally and properly, but there was warmth in his eyes that hadn't been there before. They had lunch at the hotel restaurant, a luxury that made Lucy's eyes huge. People stared and whispered, but Samuel ignored them with magnificent indifference, focusing instead on helping Rose with her napkin and making sure Lucy got enough to eat. "Are you my papa now?" Lucy asked Samuel directly with a child's straightforward curiosity. Samuel looked at Emma, who nodded slightly. "If you'd like me to be," he said to Lucy, "though you can call me whatever feels comfortable." "Rose calls you Papa," Lucy observed. "She does." Lucy considered this. "Maybe I'll call you Mr. Samuel for now, and Papa later when I'm used to it." "That sounds just fine," Samuel agreed. The ride to the ranch home, Emma corrected herself, was different this time. She sat on the wagon seat beside Samuel while the girls rode in the back, chattering and planning their shared room. Her few possessions had been loaded earlier, fitting into 2 small boxes that seemed pitiful against the permanence of the ranch. "We'll go to town next week," Samuel said quietly. "Get you and Lucy proper clothes, whatever household things you need. Make a list." "That's not necessary." "It is," he interrupted gently. "You're my wife now. What you need, you'll have." The word wife sent an unexpected shiver through Emma, not unpleasant but unfamiliar. She was someone's wife again, but it felt different this time. With Thomas, she'd been swept up in emotion, carried along by his dreams and enthusiasm. With Samuel, she'd walked in with her eyes open, each step a deliberate choice. The first week at the Double H Ranch passed in a blur of adjustment and discovery. Emma threw herself into learning the rhythms of her new home, grateful for the distraction from the strange reality of being married to a man she barely knew. Each morning she woke before dawn in her separate bedroom, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the house settling around her, Samuel's heavy footsteps in the hallway, Rose and Lucy's whispered conversations through the wall, the distant lowing of cattle. The kitchen became her domain immediately. That first morning as Samuel's wife, she descended the stairs to find him attempting to make breakfast, burning bacon, while simultaneously undercooking eggs. "I usually manage better than this," he'd said ruefully, surrendering the spatula to her grateful hands. "Mornings make fools of us all," Emma had replied, salvaging what she could while starting fresh bacon. The simple act of cooking, of creating something nourishing from raw ingredients, grounded her in a way nothing else could. This at least she knew how to do. The girls adapted with the resilience of children, forming an instant bond that transformed the quiet ranch house. Rose bloomed under Lucy's more outgoing influence, while Lucy found in Rose a steady companion who tempered her sometimes reckless enthusiasm. They created elaborate games involving the barn cat, spent hours at the corral fence watching the horses, and whispered secrets that ended in explosive giggles. "Mama," Lucy said one evening, helping Emma clear the dinner table. "Rose says her mama used to make apple dumplings every Sunday. Could we do that?" Emma glanced at Samuel, who was pretending to read his newspaper but clearly listening. Did she have a recipe written down? Mary kept a book, Samuel said quietly. It's in the pantry top shelf. Haven't looked at it since. Emma found the cookbook that night after the girls were asleep, a worn leather journal filled with careful handwriting. Mary Hayes had been meticulous, noting not just ingredients but memories, Rose's favorite for birthdays. Samuel requests this every harvest, perfect for summer picnics. Emma traced the words with one finger, feeling like an intruder in another woman's life. You don't have to use it, Samuel's voice came from the doorway, startling her. I just thought the girls might like. It's a wonderful book, Emma said honestly. Your wife was very organized. She was. Samuel entered the kitchen, maintaining his usual careful distance. Emma, I want you to know you don't have to compete with her memory. This is your home now. Make it yours. It doesn't bother you. My changing things. Samuel considered this. Mary's been gone 2 years. The house has been stuck in time, like if nothing changed, maybe she'd walk back through the door. But that's not fair to anyone, especially not the girls. They need to see life moving forward, not frozen in the past. It was the most he'd spoken about his late wife since that first day on the town steps. Emma sensed an opening, a crack in the wall he kept around himself. How did you meet her? A small smile touched Samuel's lips. She was the new school teacher in Cedar Ridge. Came from back east, full of ideas about proper education and culture. I was just a ranch hand then, working for old Mr. Henderson, who owned this place before me. She was so far above my station it was laughable, but somehow, he shrugged, somehow she saw something in me worth taking a chance on. Emma heard the echo of their own situation in his words, reversed though it was. She sounds wonderful. She was. And you're nothing like her, which is probably good. Rose needs to learn there's more than one way to be a woman, more than one kind of strength. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Samuel cleared his throat. About the men I mentioned, the ones looking for you in town, Jim heard they've been asking more questions. Thomas, how much did he tell you about his debts? Emma's stomach tightened. Very little. He always said not to worry, that he'd handle everything. Men like that count on widows not knowing the details. Samuel moved to the window, checking the locks automatically. I've asked around. Thomas borrowed from Jack Morrison's outfit out of Billings. They're not the kind of men who forgive debts. How much? Emma's voice came out smaller than intended. $800 plus interest. Probably over $1,000 by now. The number hit Emma like a physical blow. $1,000 might as well have been $1 million. There's no way. You're my wife now, Samuel said firmly. Your debts are mine. But Morrison's men don't always care about legal niceties. We need to be watchful. Emma sank into a kitchen chair, the weight of this new worry adding to all the others she carried. I didn't know. Samuel, I swear I didn't know it was that much or who he'd borrowed from. I believe you. Samuel's hand moved as if to touch her shoulder, then pulled back. We'll handle it, but you and the girls need to stay close to the house for now. No trips to town alone. The restriction chafed even as Emma understood the necessity. She'd traded one kind of prison for another, though this one at least came with food and safety. Over the following days, she threw herself even harder into making the ranch house a home. She sewed new curtains from fabric Samuel brought from town, bright yellow, that caught the morning sun. She reorganized the pantry, scrubbed every surface until it gleamed, and yes, she made Mary's apple dumplings on Sunday, watching Rose's face light up at the familiar taste. It's just like Mama's, Rose breathed, then looked stricken as if she'd said something wrong. Good, Emma said gently. Your Mama's recipes should be remembered and shared. Lucy, would you like to learn to make them too? Both girls nodded eagerly, and something shifted in the kitchen's atmosphere as if Mary's ghost had given her blessing and peacefully withdrawn. Samuel noticed the changes but said little beyond occasional approving nods. He was a man of actions rather than words, Emma was learning. His approval came in the form of small considerations, bringing her coffee exactly how she liked it, without being asked, fixing a squeaky floorboard that had been annoying her, installing a higher shelf in the kitchen so she could reach it more easily. 2 weeks into the marriage, Emma was hanging laundry when she spotted riders approaching from the east. Her body tensed immediately, remembering Samuel's warnings, but as they drew closer, She recognized Jim's familiar form leading the group. Ranch hands returning from moving cattle, nothing more. She was about to return to her work when she noticed another rider separate from the group approaching from the north. This one moved differently, purposefully directly toward the house, rather than the barn where the hands would go. Emma dried her hands on her apron, unease prickling at her neck. The man who dismounted at her garden gate was well dressed for this part of Montana, his clothes too clean, his boots too shiny. He had the kind of handsomeness that knew itself. Dark hair slicked back and a mustache waxed to points. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Mrs. Caldwell, he called, though he clearly knew who she was. Mrs. Hayes, Emma corrected, standing straighter. Ah, yes, the recent marriage. Congratulations. The man's tone suggested anything but good wishes. I'm Paul Morrison. I believe you knew my associate, your late husband. The blood drained from Emma's face. This wasn't one of Morrison's men. This was Morrison himself. My husband is in the barn. I can fetch him if you have business. My business is with you, Mrs. Hayes. Morrison let himself through the gate without invitation. You see, Thomas Caldwell died owing me a significant sum. As his widow, that debt passes to you. I'm remarried. Any debts? Legal technicalities, but Morrison waved dismissively. I find that moral obligations transcend mere paperwork. Your husband borrowed money in good faith. He made promises. The fact that he died before fulfilling those promises doesn't erase them. Emma backed toward the house, but Morrison moved to block her path to the door. $800, Mrs. Hayes, plus 6 months of interest at our agreed rates. Shall we call it an even $1,200, but I don't have that kind of money. No? This seems like a prosperous ranch. Surely your new husband values his new wife enough to settle her obligations. Is there a problem here? Samuel's voice came from behind Morrison, cold as winter wind. Emma hadn't heard him approach, but there he stood, rifle held casually but ready. Morrison turned slowly, his smile widening. Mr. Hayes, I was just discussing a financial matter with your wife. Any financial matters concerning my wife go through me, Samuel said evenly. State your business. $1,200, Morrison said simply. What Thomas Caldwell owed me now owed by his widow. Thomas Caldwell's debts died with him. That's the law. Morrison laughed an ugly sound. The law. Yes, let's talk about the law. The law that says a man can't collect legitimate debts, or perhaps the law that says accidents happen on isolated ranches. Fires start so easily this time of year. Cattle wander off. Children playing by themselves sometimes get hurt. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Samuel's grip on the rifle tightened, but his voice remained steady. Get off my land! I'll give you a month to think about it, Morrison said, moving toward his horse. $1,200, Mr. Hayes, a small price for peace of mind. He tipped his hat mockingly at Emma. Mrs. Hayes, lovely to finally meet you. They watched him ride away in tense silence. Only when he was out of sight did Samuel lower the rifle. Pack a bag for you and the girls, he said quietly. We're not running, Emma protested, surprising herself with her vehemence. Samuel looked at her, then really looked at her, and she saw something she hadn't expected: fear. Emma, you don't understand. Morrison doesn't make idle threats. I understand perfectly. Emma's chin lifted. Men like him have been threatening me since Thomas died. If we run now, we'll always be running. Besides, where would we go? This is our home. Our home, Samuel repeated softly as if testing the words. You've been here 2 weeks. 2 weeks or 2 years, it doesn't matter. I'm your wife. The girls are sisters now. We stand our ground. Samuel studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. But we take precautions. The girls don't leave the house alone. You're armed when you're outside, and we sleep in shifts until this is resolved. How do we resolve it? We don't have $1,200. I have $800 in the bank, Samuel admitted. Saved for expanding the herd. It won't cover all of it, but maybe Morrison will take a partial payment. No, Emma said immediately. That's your money, your dream. You're my wife, Samuel interrupted. Your problems are mine. The simple declaration shouldn't have affected her as much as it did. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. But something warm unfurled in Emma's chest, a feeling she didn't dare examine too closely. That night after the girls were asleep, Emma found Samuel sitting on the porch with his rifle keeping watch. She brought him coffee and sat in the other chair, her own shotgun across her lap. They'd found it in the barn, and Samuel had spent an hour teaching her to use it. "You don't have to sit with me," he said. "Partners, remember, we share the burdens." They sat in companionable silence, watching the darkness beyond the porch light. Somewhere an owl called, and further off, coyotes yipped at the moon. "Tell me about Thomas," Samuel said suddenly. "Not the debts. Him." Emma considered the question. He was bright, like a candle flame, exciting and warm and constantly in motion. He had such dreams, Samuel. "We were going to build an empire out here," he said. "Start with a small farm, grow it into the biggest spread in Montana. Every week it was a new plan, a new scheme that would make us rich." "You loved him." "I loved who I thought he was," Emma corrected. "Or maybe I loved who I was when I was with him, young, hopeful, believing anything was possible. But dreams don't put food on the table. Charm doesn't keep creditors away. And when things got hard, when Lucy came and the money ran out," she paused, ashamed of speaking ill of the dead. "He wasn't built for hardship." "Most people aren't," Samuel said quietly. "It's not a moral failing to be soft. It's just inconvenient out here." "Were you always hard?" Emma asked, then flushed at how it sounded. But Samuel seemed to understand what she meant. "My father was a mean drunk. My mother died when I was 10, probably from one beating too many. I learned early that the world doesn't care about your feelings, only your actions." Mary softened me some. Reminded me there was kindness in the world worth protecting. When she died, he shrugged. I started turning back to stone. Rose kept me human, barely. And now, Samuel turned to look at her in the dim light. "Now I have reasons to stay soft. 3 of them sleeping upstairs. 3. He was including Lucy without hesitation, and Emma felt that warmth in her chest again. A sound in the darkness made them both tense, but it was just Jim returning from his own patrol of the property. "All quiet, boss," he reported. "Set up watches with the boys. We'll keep eyes out." The ranch hands had rallied around the threat without question, Emma had noticed. Whatever Samuel had done to earn their loyalty ran deep. Days passed in watchful tension. Emma went about her routines, cooking, cleaning, teaching the girls their letters, but always with one eye on the windows, the shotgun never far from reach. Samuel worked closer to the house than usual, his rifle always within arm's length. It was Rose who first noticed something wrong. "Papa," she said at breakfast 4 days after Morrison's visit. "There's smoke. Out by the east pasture." Samuel was moving before she finished speaking, Jim, and 2 other hands with him. Emma kept the girls inside, watching through the window as the men rode hard toward the rising black column. Her stomach knotted with each passing minute until she saw them returning, Samuel's face grim. "Hayes shed," he reported tersely. "Lost about half the winter feed. It was Set found oil can nearby." Morrison's first message. Emma felt fury rise in her throat, hot and choking. "That bastard language," Samuel said, mildly glancing at the girls, but there was approval in his eyes. "Jim's riding to town to report it to the sheriff." "The sheriff won't do anything," Emma said bitterly. "Men like Morrison own men like the sheriff." "Probably. But we follow the law anyway. It's what separates us from them." That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She paced her room, anger and fear warring in her chest. This was her fault. Her past, her husband's debts bringing danger to this peaceful place. Maybe she should leave, take Lucy, and disappear somewhere Morrison wouldn't follow. A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Emma." Samuel's voice quiet and concerned. She opened the door to find him in his nightshirt and trousers, looking as sleepless as she felt. "I heard you pacing." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to wake you. I wasn't sleeping." He hesitated, then said, Would you like to talk? Kitchen might be warmer than pacing." She followed him downstairs, where he stoked the stove and made tea with surprising efficiency. They sat at the table, the lamp casting a warm circle of light around them. "You're thinking of running," Samuel said without preamble. Emma startled. "How did you—" Same look Mary had when she was first diagnosed, like if she could just leave, she could outrun the sickness. He wrapped his hands around his mug. "But you can't outrun men like Morrison any more than you can outrun fever. They have to be faced." "Oh, with what we're outnumbered, outgunned. He has money connections. We have right on our side." Emma laughed bitterly. "Right doesn't stop bullets or fires." "No," Samuel agreed, "but it lets you sleep at night. It means the community stands with you eventually, even if they're scared at first. And it means you can look your daughters in the eye and tell them you didn't bow to evil, even if it costs everything." Samuel reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, but close. "Emma, I've already lost everything once. The ranch, the cattle, the money, it's just things. But integrity, courage. The example we set for our girls, that's everything. Our girls." There it was again, that easy inclusion that made Emma's throat tight. "I brought this trouble to your door," she whispered. "No, Morrison brought it. You're just the excuse he's using." Samuel did touch her hand, then briefly his calluses rough against her skin. "I knew who Thomas borrowed from before I married you. I made my choice with open eyes." "Why?" The question she'd asked before but never felt truly answered. "Why choose this trouble?" Samuel was quiet for a long moment, studying their barely touching hands. "The morning I saw you on those steps, you were at the end of everything. No food, no money, no hope. But when I offered help, your first instinct was to protect your dignity. You were starving, and you still had fight in you. I thought anyone that strong deserved a chance, and selfishly I wanted that strength in my life, in Rose's life." "I don't feel strong," Emma admitted. "I feel scared all the time." "Courage isn't the absence of fear," Samuel said. "It's acting despite the fear. And you, Emma Hayes, are the most courageous woman I've ever met." The moment stretched between them, fragile and important. Then a sound from outside broke it, horses moving fast. Samuel was up instantly, rifle in hand. Emma grabbed the shotgun, following him to the window. But instead of Morrison's men, it was Jim and the sheriff, along with two other men Emma didn't recognize. Sheriff Watson was a thin man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Mr. Hayes," he said when Samuel opened the door. "We've had a development." They gathered in the kitchen, the two strangers introduced as federal marshals from Billings. The older one, Marshal Coleman, had a face like granite and eyes that missed nothing. "We've been investigating Paul Morrison for some time," Coleman said without preamble. "Extortion, illegal lending practices, suspected murder. Your complaint about the fire gave us the excuse we needed to move on him." Emma felt hope flutter in her chest. "You can arrest him." "Not yet," Coleman admitted. "We need more evidence, but we can offer protection while we build our case, and we can make it clear to Morrison that federal eyes are watching." "How long?" Samuel asked. "Could be weeks. Could be months. But Morrison's careful. He won't act openly with us around." It was something at least. The marshals departed with promises to return regularly, leaving the sheriff to awkwardly apologize for his previous inaction. "Morrison's had this county in his pocket for years," Watson admitted, "but federal marshals, even he can't buy them all." After they left, Emma and Samuel stood in the kitchen processing this development. "It's not over," Samuel said, "but it's breathing room." "I should write to Thomas's family," Emma said suddenly. "They might know more about the debts, have documentation that could help the marshals." Samuel nodded approvingly. "Good thinking. We fight this smart, not just strong." Over the following weeks, a new routine emerged. The marshals made regular appearances obvious enough to be noticed. Morrison's harassment shifted to petty annoyances, cut fence lines, spooked cattle, rather than direct attacks. Emma threw herself into correspondence, tracking down every lead about Thomas's dealings. And somewhere in the midst of danger and determination, something shifted between her and Samuel. The careful distance remained, but it felt less like a wall and more like a dance, each of them learning the other's rhythm. She learned that he hummed when he worked leather, always the same tune, an old hymn his mother had sung. He learned that she talked to herself when cooking, planning the meal aloud like a general organizing troops. She discovered his dry sense of humor emerging in unexpected observations that made her laugh despite everything. He discovered her fierce competitive streak when they played checkers with the girls. "You're ruthless," he said one evening after she'd thoroughly trounced him. "Remind me never to cross you in business." "Too late," she replied. "You already married me." The words were meant as a joke, but something passed across Samuel's face. Not regret, but a kind of wondering, as if he was seeing something he hadn't expected. The girls, oblivious to the adult undercurrents, thrived despite the restrictions. Rose was teaching Lucy to ride, while Lucy was teaching Rose the elaborate clapping games she'd learned in town. They'd moved into the same room by choice, their whispers and giggles lasting long past bedtime. "They're real sisters now," Samuel observed one evening, watching them chase fireflies in the yard, Jim keeping careful watch nearby. "Blood couldn't make them closer," Emma agreed. "Family's about choice as much as birth," Samuel said quietly. "Maybe more." Emma felt the weight of his words, the unspoken question beneath them. They were playing at family, going through the motions, but somewhere along the way it had started to feel real. The careful boundaries were still there, but they were becoming harder to maintain. One night, a month after Morrison's first visit, Emma woke to the sound of Lucy crying. She hurried to the girls' room to find her daughter caught in a nightmare calling for her father. "Shh, sweetheart," Emma soothed, gathering Lucy close. "It's all right. You're safe." "I dreamed the bad men came," Lucy sobbed. "They took you away like they took Papa." Emma's heart cracked. She'd tried to shield Lucy from the current danger, but children saw more than adults realized. Samuel appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. Without hesitation, he entered and sat on Rose's bed, his daughter immediately curling into his side, also awakened and frightened. "Lucy girl," he said gently. "Can I tell you something?" Lucy nodded, hiccuping through her tears. "Your Papa Thomas, he was taken by an accident. That was nobody's fault, just sad chance. But your mama, she's not going anywhere, and neither am I. You know why?" "Why?" Lucy whispered. "Because we're too stubborn," Samuel said seriously. "Ask anyone. Your mama's the stubbornest woman in Montana, and I'm the stubbornest man. Bad men see us coming and run the other way." Lucy giggled wetly. "Mama is pretty stubborn." "Hey," Emma protested mildly, but she was smiling. "And you know what else?" Samuel continued. "We have Jim and the boys watching out for us. And the marshals. And most importantly, we have each other. That's a lot of protection for one little girl." "And Rose too?" Lucy asked. "And Rose too," Samuel confirmed, squeezing his daughter. "We protect our own." Lucy settled against Emma, her breathing evening out. But she had one more question. "Mr. Samuel, are you my papa now? For real?" Emma felt Samuel's eyes on her in the dim light, asking permission. She nodded slightly. "If you want me to be," Samuel said softly, "I'd be honored to be your papa, Lucy." "Okay," Lucy said simply, with a child's easy acceptance. "Papa?" Oh, the word hung in the air like a blessing. Rose smiled sleepily, reaching across the gap between beds to take Lucy's hand. "Sisters and family for real now," she mumbled. After the girls fell back asleep, Emma and Samuel found themselves in the hallway, neither quite ready to return to their separate rooms. "Thank you," Emma said, "for what you said to Lucy." "I meant it," Samuel replied. "She's mine now if you'll let her be. Both of you are." The words carried weight beyond legal arrangements, beyond business partnerships. Emma felt herself standing at a crossroads she hadn't expected to reach so soon. "Samuel," she began, then stopped, uncertain how to voice the change she felt happening between them. He seemed to understand anyway. "I know," he said softly. "I feel it too. But there's no rush, Emma. We have time." Time. It felt like a luxury after months of desperate scrambling. I don't know how to do this slowly," she admitted. "With Thomas, everything was a whirlwind. This is different," Samuel finished. "Better, maybe, built on something solid instead of just passion." "Is that enough?" Emma asked the question that haunted her quiet moments. "Is respect and partnership enough without love?" Samuel stepped closer still, maintaining that careful distance, but less than before. Emma, I think maybe love isn't always lightning. Sometimes it's a seed that needs the right soil and time to grow. What we're building here, trust, respect, genuine care, that's good soil. Emma looked up at him, this steady man who'd offered her shelter, and was somehow offering so much more. I'm not ready, she whispered. But I'm not saying never. I'm a patient man, Samuel said. I've waited 2 years to feel anything again. I can wait as long as you need. A crash from outside shattered the moment. Samuel grabbed his rifle while Emma ran to check the girls. Through the window, she could see flames. The chicken coop was ablaze. Stay with the girls, Samuel ordered, but Emma was already grabbing the shotgun. Partners, remember? They fought the fire together, joined quickly by Jim and the ranch hands. The chickens were saved, though the coop was a loss. But it was the message painted on the barn that chilled Emma's blood. Time's running out, Morrison was escalating despite the marshal's presence. That's it, Samuel said grimly as dawn broke over the smoky yard. We're going on the offensive. Samuel's idea of going on the offensive began with an unexpected ally. The morning after the fire, while Emma was salvaging what she could from the destroyed coop, a carriage arrived at the ranch. Not the rough wagon of a neighbor or the official vehicle of the marshals, but an elegant black carriage more suited to city streets than ranch roads. The woman who stepped out was everything Emma wasn't polished elegant, wearing a dress that probably cost more than the ranch hands made in a year. Her auburn hair was perfectly arranged, her posture that of someone who'd never had to scrub a floor or birth a calf. Yet there was steel in her green eyes that Emma recognized immediately. Mrs. Hayes, the woman asked, though she was looking at Samuel. I'm Charlotte Morrison, Paul's wife. Samuel's hand moved to his rifle, but Charlotte raised a gloved hand. I'm not here as his ally, Mr. Hayes, quite the opposite. Emma stepped forward, wiping her soot-covered hands on her apron. Why would Paul Morrison's wife come here? Charlotte's perfect composure cracked slightly. Because I want him destroyed as much as you do. May we speak inside? I'd rather not have this conversation where one of his men might see. They gathered in the parlor the girls sent upstairs with strict instructions to stay in their room. Jim positioned himself by the front door, rifle ready. Charlotte sat primly on the edge of the settee, looking out of place in the simple room. Paul married me for my father's money, she began without preamble. Father owned several legitimate banks in Chicago. Paul saw an opportunity to expand his less legitimate operations. What he didn't count on was father dying last year and leaving everything to me, not him. I fail to see how this helps us, Samuel said bluntly. Charlotte smiled a sharp expression that transformed her beauty into something dangerous. Paul needs my signature to access those funds. I've refused. But more importantly, I've been documenting his activities for the past 3 years. Every illegal loan, every act of violence, every bribe. I have a safety deposit box in Billings full of evidence that would see him hanged. Emma leaned forward. Then why haven't you used it? Because he'd kill me before I could testify, Charlotte said simply. But if the federal marshals already have him for something else, if he's already in custody when the evidence comes to light. She shrugged elegantly. Widowhood would suit me better than this marriage. What do you want from us? Samuel asked. I need him to overplay his hand here. Push him to do something so blatant, so public, that the marshals have no choice but to arrest him immediately. Once he's in custody, I'll provide everything they need to keep him there. Emma exchanged glances with Samuel. It was risky making themselves bait, but it might be their only chance. What did you have in mind? Emma asked. Charlotte reached into her handbag and pulled out a piece of paper. A promissory note supposedly signed by Thomas Caldwell. It's forged. Paul had it made last week, but it claims Thomas put up the ranch as collateral. Samuel's face darkened. He wants the double H. He wants to hurt you for defying him, Charlotte corrected. The ranch is just the means. He plans to arrive tomorrow with the sheriff, and a judge he's bought claim the ranch is legally his. When you refuse, she didn't need to finish. The marshals will be watching, Emma said slowly. If he tries to force us off with violence in front of witnesses, exactly. Charlotte stood smoothing her skirts. I should go before I'm missed. But Mrs. Hayes, Emma, be ready. Paul's not a patient man, and you've humiliated him by standing firm. He'll come hard and fast. She moved toward the door, then paused. You know I admire you. Starting over, finding love again after loss. It gives me hope that there's life after Paul Morrison. After she left, Emma and Samuel stood in the parlor processing this unexpected development. Can we trust her? Emma asked. A woman scorned is a powerful ally, Samuel said thoughtfully, and she has more to gain from his downfall than we do. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Samuel gathered the ranch hands explaining what was coming. To a man, they stood firm. Jim spat tobacco juice and declared, Been waiting for a good fight. Ranch work gets boring. Emma prepared too in her own way. She hid the girls' favorite things in a sack by the back door in case they needed to run. She loaded extra ammunition for both the shotgun and the rifle. She wrote letters to be sent if something happened to them, ensuring the girls would be cared for. That evening, as she was putting the girls to bed, Lucy asked, Are the bad men coming tomorrow? Mama? Emma's instinct was to lie to protect, but she remembered Samuel's words about treating the girls as family. They might, sweetheart, but we're ready for them. I'm not scared, Rose said, though her voice trembled slightly. Papa won't let them hurt us. Neither will Mama, Lucy said firmly, and Emma felt a fierce surge of love for these brave little girls. After they were asleep, Emma found Samuel on the porch, keeping watch, as had become his habit. She sat beside him closer than usual, their shoulders almost touching. I'm frightened, she admitted in the darkness. So am I, Samuel replied, which somehow made her feel better. But Emma, whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know something. He turned to face her, his gray eyes serious in the moonlight. These past weeks with you have been unexpected. I thought I was offering you a business arrangement, a practical solution to both our problems, but somewhere along the way it became more. You became more. Emma's heart raced. Samuel, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I just needed you to know that if something happens tomorrow, I'll be fighting for more than just the ranch. I'll be fighting for the future I've started to imagine with you. The words hung between them, a declaration and a promise. Emma reached out, taking his hand in hers. It was the first time she'd initiated contact between them, and she felt him still in surprise. That future you're imagining, she said softly. I've been imagining it too. They sat holding hands in the darkness, drawing strength from each other for whatever dawn would bring. Eventually exhaustion drove them inside, but Emma paused at her bedroom door. Samuel, whatever happens tomorrow, I'm glad I married you. It started as desperation, but it's become the best choice I ever made. She didn't wait for his response, slipping into her room with her heart pounding. But she heard his quiet words through the door. You saved me too, Emma. More than you know. Dawn came too soon, bringing with it the sound of multiple horses approaching. Emma dressed quickly, but carefully choosing her best dress. If they were going to face Morrison, she'd do it with dignity. She found Samuel already in the kitchen wearing his church clothes, his rifle leaning against the table. The girls, he asked, still sleeping. I thought, better they don't see unless necessary. Samuel nodded, then surprised her by stepping close, cupping her face gently in his hands. Whatever happens, we face it together. Together, Emma agreed, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her, but the sound of Morrison's voice from the yard broke the spell. They stepped onto the porch to find Morrison with a dozen men, including Sheriff Watson, looking uncomfortable, and a weaselly man in a too-fancy suit who must be the bought judge. But more importantly, Marshals Coleman and his partner were there too, positioned strategically to see everything. Mr. Hayes, Morrison called out cheerfully, I'm here to collect my property. This is my ranch, Samuel said evenly. Morrison produced the forged note with a flourish. This says otherwise. Thomas Caldwell put up this ranch as collateral for his loan. Judge Brennan here has reviewed it and confirmed its legitimacy. That's a lie. Emma stepped forward. Thomas never owned this ranch, so he couldn't have used it as collateral. A wife often doesn't know her husband's business dealings, Morrison said dismissively. Though I suppose you've had practice being kept in the dark, haven't you? First husband, now second. You do have a type. The insult was calculated to provoke Samuel, but he remained steady. That document is forged. Thomas Caldwell never set foot on this ranch while he was alive. Can you prove that? Morrison asked silkily. Can you prove it's real? Samuel countered. Morrison's smile turned nasty. I don't have to. Judge Brennan has already ruled. Sheriff, do your duty. Evict these squatters from my property. Sheriff Watson stepped forward reluctantly. Mr. Hayes, I'm going to need you to vacate. No, Samuel said simply. This doesn't have to be unpleasant, Morrison said. Take your family and go. I'm feeling generous. You can even take your personal belongings. This is our home, Emma said, her voice carrying across the yard. We're not leaving. Morrison's mask finally slipped. Then we'll remove you. He gestured to his men who started forward. Samuel raised his rifle, and suddenly the yard was full of armed ranch hands appearing from the barn, the house strategic positions they'd taken before dawn. Seems we have a standoff, Samuel said calmly. You're outnumbered, Morrison snarled. Are we? Jim asked cheerfully, and more men appeared, neighbors, Emma realized with shock. Ranchers from surrounding spreads, men who'd stood by while she struggled as a widow, but who wouldn't let Morrison steal a ranch through force. This is legal execution of a court order, Morrison shouted. You're all breaking the law. Actually, Marshal Coleman spoke for the first time, moving forward. The only one breaking the law here is you, Mr. Morrison. Morrison spun to face him. This is a local matter, Marshal. No federal jurisdiction. Forging legal documents is a federal crime, Coleman said mildly, as is crossing state lines to enforce fraudulent claims. You came from Wyoming this morning, didn't you? Morrison's face went pale. You can't prove that document is forged. Actually, we can. Charlotte Morrison stepped out of the house, and Emma realized she'd been hidden inside all along. Hello, Paul. Charlotte, Morrison's voice cracked. What are you doing here? Ending this charade. She walked down the porch steps with perfect poise, stopping in front of the marshal. Marshal Coleman, I'd like to report a crime. Multiple crimes, actually. She handed him a thick envelope. This contains evidence of forgery, extortion, bribery, and murder. You bitch, Morrison breathed. You're my wife. You can't testify against me. I can't be compelled to testify, Charlotte corrected. But I can volunteer. And I do. Morrison lunged for her, but Samuel's rifle butt caught him in the stomach, dropping him to his knees. Never raise a hand to a woman in my presence, Samuel said coldly. Marshal Coleman gestured to his partner. Paul Morrison, you're under arrest for forgery, attempted extortion, and assault. I'm sure more charges will follow once we review Mrs. Morrison's evidence. As the marshal's partner cuffed Morrison, he looked up at Emma with pure hatred. This isn't over. I have friends' resources. You'll never be safe. Yes, we will, Charlotte said coolly, because if anything happens to the Hayes family, every document in that envelope gets published in newspapers from here to Chicago. Your friends will abandon you rather than be dragged down with you. Morrison was hauled to his feet, still cursing and threatening. His men scattered like rats, Sheriff Watson among them suddenly remembering urgent business elsewhere. The bot judge tried to slink away, but was stopped by Marshal Coleman's partner for questioning. As the dust settled, Emma found herself surrounded by neighbors who'd come to help. Women she'd barely spoken to in town squeezed her hands. Men nodded respectfully to Samuel. They'd proven themselves somehow by standing firm. Thank you, Samuel said simply to the gathered crowd. We won't forget this. Old Mr. Patterson, who hadn't said 3 words to Emma in all her time as a widow, cleared his throat. We don't let outsiders steal Montana ranches. That's not how we do things here. He paused, then added grudgingly. Besides, your wife makes the best apple dumplings in the county. Be ashamed to lose those. Emma laughed, surprising herself with the sound. She'd made apple dumplings for the church social last week, her first attempt at community involvement since marrying Samuel. As the neighbors dispersed, Charlotte approached Emma. I'll be leaving for Chicago this afternoon. My father's lawyers will handle the divorce, and I'll testify when needed. But I wanted to thank you for giving me the courage to act. You saved us, Emma said sincerely. Charlotte smiled, that sharp expression softening into something genuine. We saved each other. Women have to in a world run by Paul Morrisons. She looked at Samuel, who was talking with the marshals. You found a good one, though. They're rare. I know, Emma said softly, watching her husband. The word came easier now, husband, not just legally, but in her heart. After Charlotte left with the marshals after the ranch hands dispersed to their delayed chores after the crisis passed, Emma and Samuel stood alone in their yard. The girls had slept through it all, a small miracle Emma was grateful for. "It's over," Samuel said, as if he couldn't quite believe it. "The threat is, Ma," Emma agreed. "But we're just beginning." Samuel looked at her, understanding her meaning. The external danger had passed, but they still had to navigate what they were becoming to each other. That evening, as Emma prepared dinner with a lightness she hadn't felt in years, the girls chattered about their day, blissfully unaware of the morning's drama. They'd spent it with Mrs. Patterson, the rancher's wife, having quietly appeared to take them on a special adventure that kept them away from the confrontation. "Mrs. Patterson taught us to make corn dollies," Lucy announced, showing off a twisted straw figure. "She said Mama could come to the sewing circle next week." Emma nearly dropped the pot she was carrying. The sewing circle was the inner sanctum of Cedar Ridge society. Widows, especially poor ones, weren't invited. "That's wonderful," Samuel said, catching Emma's eye with a small smile. "Seems you're officially a rancher's wife now." After dinner, as had become their custom, they all gathered in the parlor. Samuel read from a book of adventures while Emma mended clothes, the girls playing quietly at their feet. It was domestic, peaceful, everything Emma had never known to want, but now couldn't imagine living without. When the girls were in bed, Emma found herself restless. The adrenaline of the day, the relief of safety, the overwhelming realization that this was truly her life now, it all churned inside her. She wandered back to the parlor to find Samuel banking the fire for the night. "Can't sleep," he asked. "Too much in my head, Tom," she admitted. Samuel straightened, dusting his hands. "Walk with me. The moon's full and the night's warm." They strolled toward the small rise behind the house, the one that offered a view of the entire ranch spread out below. The moonlight turned everything silver beautiful and otherworldly. "I never thanked you properly," Emma said, "for standing up to Morrison, for protecting us." "It's what a husband does," Samuel said simply. "Is that what we are now, really?" Emma asked, her heart pounding. "Not just legally, but—" Samuel turned to face her fully. "Emma, I need to tell you something. These past weeks, watching you make this house a home, seeing you with the girls facing danger beside you, I've been falling in love with you. Not the lightning strike kind, but the sunrise kind, slow and steady and inevitable." Emma's breath caught. "Samuel, I know we agreed to take things slow, and I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. But I needed you to know how I feel. You deserve to know you're not just a partner or a solution to my loneliness. You're the woman I love." The words she'd been afraid to hope for delivered in Samuel's straightforward way. No poetry, no grand gestures, just honest truth. "I love you too," Emma whispered, the words escaping before she could overthink them. "I didn't think I could after Thomas, but you've shown me a different kind of love, steady and strong and safe." Samuel stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "Is this all right?" Instead of answering, Emma rose on her toes and kissed him. It wasn't her first kiss, she'd been married before after all, but it felt like the first kiss that mattered, the first that was chosen, rather than fallen into. Samuel's lips were gentle against hers, respectful, even in passion, and when they parted, Emma felt something settle in her chest that had been restless since Thomas died. "Stay with me tonight?" Samuel asked softly. "Not just to hold you, to wake up beside you, to start being truly married." Emma considered, then nodded. "Let me check the girls first." She looked in on Lucy and Rose tangled together in sleep like puppies and felt her heart expand. Her daughter, her new daughter, safe and loved. Then she went to Samuel's room, their room now, and found him waiting nervous as a young man. "I haven't shared a bed since Mary," he admitted. "I haven't shared one since Thomas," Emma replied. "We'll figure it out together." They lay down fully clothed on top of the covers, at first awkward and careful. Then Samuel laughed a rusty sound that made Emma smile. "We're acting like children," he said. "Better than rushing into something we're not ready for," Emma pointed out. Eventually they relaxed Samuel's arm around Emma's head on his chest. She could hear his heartbeat steady and strong, like everything about him. "I have a confession," Samuel said into the darkness. That first day when I saw you on the steps, I'd noticed you before. In town at church. You always held your head high even when things were worst. I admired you from afar, but I never thought, a woman like you would never look at a rough rancher like me. A woman like me, refined, educated. You speak properly, your manners are perfect even when you're starving. Your quality, Emma. Emma laughed softly. I was a shopkeeper's daughter who married a dreamer and ended up destitute. Hardly quality. Your quality where it counts, Samuel insisted. In character. They talked through the night, sharing stories they'd held back during their careful courtship. Samuel told her about his childhood, the harsh father and gentle mother, the way he'd sworn to be different. Emma told him about her parents, her dreams of being a teacher before Thomas swept her off her feet, the guilt she carried for choosing romance over stability. We both got second chances, Samuel said as dawn began to lighten the windows. Not everyone does. We should make the most of them, Emma agreed, then yawned hugely. Sleep, Samuel said, pulling a blanket over them both. The chores can wait a few hours. Emma woke to sunlight and the sound of giggling. She opened her eyes to find Lucy and Rose peeking around the doorframe, eyes wide with delight. Mama's in Papa's bed, Lucy announced unnecessarily. Does this mean you're really, truly married now? Rose asked hopefully. Samuel, who'd woken too, pulled Emma closer. Yes, little one, really, truly married. The girls launched themselves onto the bed, and for a moment Emma was overwhelmed by the tangle of limbs and laughter. A real family, not the one she'd planned or expected, but perfect in its imperfection. Later, as she made breakfast for her family, and it was hers now fully and completely. Emma thought about the journey that had brought her here, from those desperate days on the store steps to this warm kitchen full of love and laughter. It hadn't been easy or romantic or anything like the stories she'd read as a girl, but it was real, and it was hers. What are you thinking about? Samuel asked, coming up behind her to steal a piece of bacon. How sometimes the best things come from the worst circumstances, Emma said. Like finding gold in mud, Samuel suggested. Like finding love in a business arrangement, Emma corrected, turning in his arms to kiss him, as the girls made exaggerated gagging noises. Over the next weeks, as autumn deepened toward winter, Emma settled fully into her new life. The sewing circle welcomed her with varying degrees of warmth, but she won them over with her quiet dignity and excellent needlework. The ranch thrived under their partnership. Samuel handling the cattle and horses, while Emma managed the house and finances with an efficiency that surprised them both. You've got a head for numbers, Samuel said one evening, reviewing her careful ledgers. Better than mine. I had to learn after Thomas died. Amazing what desperation can teach you. The girls grew closer every day, true sisters in every way that mattered. They started school together, defending each other against any child who dared comment on their unusual family arrangement. Lucy's bright spirit balanced Rose's quiet thoughtfulness perfectly, and Emma and Samuel grew into their love like plants reaching for sun. They learned each other's rhythms, each other's needs. Samuel discovered Emma sang when she was truly happy, a lilting voice that made him stop whatever he was doing to listen. Emma discovered Samuel wrote poetry. Terrible poetry that he hid in the barn, but that she found and treasured anyway. Their physical relationship evolved naturally without the desperate passion of youth, but with something deeper, a connection of souls that had both known loss and chosen love again. The first night they truly came together as husband and wife, Emma cried not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that she was whole again in a way she'd never expected to be. Are you all right? Samuel asked, concerned. I'm perfect, Emma assured him. We're perfect. Not perfect in the storybook sense, but perfect for each other, two damaged people who'd built something beautiful from their broken pieces. Winter arrived with a vengeance that year, snow piling high against the windows, but inside the Double H ranch house, warmth prevailed. Emma taught the girls to knit while Samuel told stories of his cattle drives. They played cards and sang songs and created the kind of memories that sustain families through generations. One particularly fierce storm night, as they all huddled in the parlor for warmth, Lucy asked, "Will we always be together?" Always. Samuel promised pulling all three of his girls close, for Emma was his girl too, he'd decided, needing protection and cherishing as much as the children. Even when we're old, Rose persisted, especially then, Emma said, families that choose each other hold tighter than blood alone. Paul Morrison was convicted on multiple charges and hanged that spring, his empire crumbling without him. Charlotte sent a letter from Chicago thanking them again and informing them she was opening a school for indigent girls with her inheritance. "We must help each other," she wrote, "those of us who understand what it means to survive." The following summer brought unexpected joy. Emma discovered she was pregnant. Samuel's reaction was everything she could have hoped: tears, laughter, and a whoop that spooked the cattle. "A baby?" Lucy and Rose asked in unison, their eyes huge. "A brother or sister," Emma confirmed. "Someone else for us to love." "We'll teach them everything," Rose said seriously. "Like how to feed chickens and ride horses and make Papa laugh," Lucy added. Samuel knelt beside the girls. "And you'll be the best big sisters in Montana." "In the world," Lucy corrected, and they all agreed. As Emma stood on the porch that evening watching Samuel teach the girls to lasso fence posts while the sun set over their land, she thought about the desperate woman she'd been less than a year ago. That woman couldn't have imagined this life, this love, this completeness. "Thank you," she whispered to the sky, to God, to whatever force had brought Samuel to those store steps that October morning. Samuel looked up, caught her eye, and smiled that special smile he saved just for her. "Come join us, Mrs. Hayes," he called. Mrs. Hayes, yes, that's who she was now. Not the widow Caldwell, not the desperate mother, but Mrs. Emma Hayes' wife, mother partner, and beloved. She'd traded desperation for hope, survival for life, loneliness for love. Walking toward her family, Emma felt the baby quicken in her womb, the future making itself known. Whatever came next, they would face it together, the four of them soon to be 5. Then, who knew? The ranch had room for growth, and their hearts had already proven infinitely expandable. "Mama, watch this," Lucy called, managing to actually catch the fence post with her rope. "That's my girl," Emma said proudly, and meant it for all of them, Lucy, Rose, and the child yet to come. All hers, all Samuel's, all choosing each other every day. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. And Emma Hayes knew with bone-deep certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. Not because it was easy or perfect or what she'd planned, but because it was real and true and chosen. And in the end, the chosen path, the one walked with deliberate steps rather than stumbled down, led to the greatest adventures of all. The baby came with the first snow of winter, arriving 2 weeks early, as if eager to join the family that awaited. Emma labored through the night with Samuel beside her, his steady presence more comfort than any medicine. Mrs. Patterson, who'd become an unexpected friend since the confrontation with Morrison, served as midwife with practiced efficiency. "It's a boy," she announced as the infant's cry filled the room, strong and insistent. Healthy as a young bull. Samuel's face transformed with wonder as Mrs. Patterson placed the baby in his arms. "A son," he whispered, then looked at Emma with tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. "You've given me a son." "What should we name him?" Emma asked, exhausted but euphoric. Samuel studied the baby's scrunched face, the tiny fingers that gripped his own with surprising strength. "James," he said finally. "James Thomas Hayes." Emma's breath caught. "After Thomas, he was Lucy's father," Samuel said simply. "That makes him part of our family's story. And James for Jim, who stood by us through everything." It was so perfectly Samuel honoring the past while building the future, acknowledging all the threads that wove their family together. Emma reached for his hand, their son cradled between them. "James Thomas Hayes," she agreed. "Jamie." Lucy and Rose were allowed in once Emma was settled, their eyes wide with awe at the tiny bundle. "He's so small," Rose breathed. "You were once too," Samuel told her. "All babies start small and grow with love." "Can I hold him?" Lucy asked tentatively. Emma showed her how to support Jamie's head, and Lucy held her half-brother with such careful reverence that Emma's heart ached with love. This little girl who'd lost so much had gained a complete family. "I'm going to teach him everything," Lucy declared, "how to ride and rope and stand up to bullies." I'll teach him to read and write and be gentle with animals, Rose added. And we'll both teach him about being brave, Lucy said, looking at Rose, who nodded solemnly. The winter months that followed were a blur of feedings and diapers, of exhausted nights and precious quiet moments. Samuel took to fatherhood with the same steady competence he brought to everything changing diapers without complaint. Walking the floors at night when Jamie was fussy, marveling at every tiny milestone. He smiled, he announced one morning as if Jamie had performed a miracle. Look, Emma, he's smiling at me. Emma, running on 3 hours of sleep and countless cups of coffee, couldn't help but laugh at her husband's enthusiasm. This man who faced down rustlers without flinching was completely undone by a baby's smile. The ranch work didn't stop for Jamie's arrival, of course. Samuel was needed for the winter feeding, for watching the pregnant cows, for the endless repairs that winter brought. But he arranged the work so he was never gone long, and the ranch hands picked up extra duties without being asked. You've got a good family there, Jim said one day. Bringing in firewood Emma hadn't even realized they were low on. Worth protecting. They are, Emma agreed, watching through the window as Samuel taught the girls to recognize different bird tracks in the snow Jamie bundled against his chest in a sling Mary had once used for Rose. Spring arrived late that year, but when it came, it brought unexpected visitors. A wagon approached the ranch one April morning, and Emma recognized the couple before they'd even climbed down Thomas's parents, Harold and Margaret Caldwell, come from Ohio. Emma's stomach clenched. She'd written them about Lucy about her remarriage, but they'd never responded. Now here they were, probably to claim their granddaughter to declare Emma an unfit mother who'd replaced their son too quickly. Mrs. Hayes, Harold said formally, his face unreadable. He was an older version of Thomas. The same dark hair gone gray, the same charming features worn by time. Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell, Emma replied, her hand instinctively going to Jamie on her hip. This is unexpected. Margaret's eyes were fixed on Lucy, who'd run up from the chicken coop with Rose. Is that Lucy? Emma called. Come meet your grandparents. Lucy approached shyly, Rose beside her for support. She looked so much like Thomas, it clearly took Margaret's breath away. Hello, Lucy said politely. I'm Lucy. This is my sister Rose. Sister? Harold's eyebrows rose. We're a family now, Emma said firmly. Lucy, why don't you and Rose go find Papa? Tell him we have guests. After the girls ran off, Emma faced Thomas's parents squarely. If you've come to cause trouble. We've come to apologize, Margaret interrupted, surprising Emma into silence. We received your letters. About the debts, the danger, your remarriage. We should have come sooner, should have helped. Thomas was our only child, Harold said heavily. When he died, we blamed everyone, you ourselves, God. It wasn't fair, but grief rarely is. Samuel arrived then, the girls flanking him, his presence immediately protective. Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell, he said with careful courtesy. Welcome to the Double H. You're Samuel Hayes. Harold studied him with sharp eyes. The man who married our daughter-in-law. The man who married Emma, Samuel corrected mildly. And took Lucy as my own daughter, yes. There was a tense moment before Harold extended his hand. Then we owe you thanks for doing what we should have done, protecting them. The visit lasted 3 days, days filled with awkward conversations that gradually warmed into something approaching understanding. Margaret couldn't get enough of Lucy listening to her chatter about school and the ranch with desperate attention. She has Thomas's enthusiasm, Margaret said one evening, watching Lucy and Rose chase fireflies. But your steadiness, Emma, it's a good combination. She's a wonderful child, Emma agreed. Happy now, safe. That's all we wanted to know, Harold said. We failed our son in many ways, never taught him responsibility, always rescued him from consequences. We won't make the same mistakes with our granddaughter. What do you mean? Samuel asked immediately, protective. Harold pulled out a leather portfolio. We've set up a trust for Lucy, for her education, her future. It's not a fortune, but it's substantial. She'll receive it when she's 21 or earlier for education expenses. Emma was stunned. We don't need... It's not about need, Margaret interrupted gently. It's about making sure our son's daughter has opportunities. Please, Let us do this one thing right." They left the next morning, but not before Margaret pulled Emma aside. "You've built something beautiful here," she said, gesturing to the ranch the family gathered to say goodbye. "Thomas would be glad Lucy has this. And Emma, you deserve happiness. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." As their wagon disappeared down the road, Lucy slipped her hand into Emma's. "Were those really my papa's parents?" "They were, sweetheart." "They seemed sad." Emma looked down at her perceptive daughter. "They lost someone they loved, but seeing you made them happy too. Like how you were sad, but then Samuel made you happy." From the mouths of babes, Emma thought. Yes, exactly like that. Summer brought its own challenges and joys. Jamie began crawling, a determined explorer who seemed intent on putting everything in his mouth. The girls appointed themselves his guardians, following him around the house with vigilant attention. "Jamie, no," became the household's most common phrase, usually followed by one of the girls extracting something inappropriate from his chubby fists. The ranch prospered under Samuel and Emma's partnership. They'd recovered from the losses Morrison had inflicted, and the cattle sales that year were the best in the Double H's history. Samuel spoke of expanding, perhaps buying the adjacent land that had come up for sale. "We could run twice the herd," he explained one evening, spreading out maps on the kitchen table. "Build a second barn, maybe hire more hands." "Can we afford it?" Emma asked, though she already knew the answer. She'd been managing the books for months now, her natural head for numbers proving invaluable. "With what we've saved and a small loan from the bank, yes." Samuel looked up at her. "But it means more work, more responsibility, and with Jamie and maybe more children, maybe—" Emma smiled, her hand going to her stomach. She'd been waiting for the right moment to tell him. Samuel's eyes widened. "Emma, are you—" "About 2 months along, I think. Mrs. Patterson confirmed it yesterday." Samuel was around the table in an instant, lifting her into his arms, spinning her while she laughed and protested. "Another baby, Emma, this is wonderful. We're going to need a bigger house," Emma pointed out when he finally set her down. "Then we'll build one," Samuel declared, "with enough rooms for a dozen children if God sees fit." "A dozen," Emma laughed. "Let's see how we handle 2 babies first." The expansion plans moved forward with characteristic Hayes determination. Samuel hired additional hands, including a young couple, Tom and Sarah Mitchell, who reminded Emma painfully of herself and Thomas in their early days, full of dreams but short on practical skills. "They need guidance," Samuel said when Emma expressed concern about Tom's inexperience, "like we all did once." So Emma took Sarah under her wing, teaching her the realities of ranch life, while Samuel worked with Tom, showing him patience despite his mistakes. It was strange being the experienced one, the one others looked to for wisdom. "You've been so kind," Sarah said one day, helping Emma with the massive weekly laundry. "When we arrived, I was terrified. I'd never been on a ranch before." "I remember the feeling," Emma admitted. "Less than 2 years ago, I was a town widow who'd never gathered eggs or milked a cow. You learn. But you and Mr. Hayes seem so perfect together, like you've always been this way." Emma laughed. "We're far from perfect, Sarah. We're just 2 people who chose to build something together. The choosing is what matters." As summer turned to autumn, Emma's pregnancy progressed smoothly. This time felt different from carrying Jamie. She was stronger, healthier, secure in her home and marriage. The girls were excited about another sibling debating names and arguing over whether a brother or sister would be better. "A sister would even things out," Rose reasoned. 2 and 2. "But another brother could help with the ranch work," Lucy countered. "Girls can do ranch work too," Rose protested. "That's true," Samuel interjected, entering the kitchen dusty from the day's labor. "Some of the best ranchers I know are women. Strong, smart, capable women." He winked at Emma. "I married one." It was during the harvest celebration that year that everything changed again. The whole community gathered at the Pattersons' ranch for the traditional feast and dance. Emma, now obviously pregnant, watched from a chair as Samuel danced with the girls, each standing on his boots as he moved them around the floor. "You've done well for yourself," a voice said beside her. Emma turned to find Charlotte Morrison, now Charlotte Bennett, having remarried a railroad man from Chicago. She looked prosperous, happy, the haunted look gone from her eyes. "Charlotte, I didn't know you were in town." Just passing through on the way to California. My husband has business there. Charlotte sat beside her elegant, even on a rough bench. I wanted to see you to thank you again. Without your courage facing Paul, I never would have found mine. We helped each other, Emma said. Is that what you tell yourself? Charlotte smiled. Emma, you stood up to my husband when you had everything to lose. A starving widow with a child, and you still said no to running. That courage gave me permission to fight back too. They talked as the music played, sharing stories of their new lives. Charlotte's school for indigent girls was thriving. She'd found love again, with a man who valued her strength rather than trying to break it. We're survivors, you and I, Charlotte said as she prepared to leave. But more than that, we're thrivers. We took our broken pieces and built something beautiful. After Charlotte left, Samuel appeared at Emma's side, ready to go home. In a moment, Emma watched the girls dancing with other children, Jamie asleep in Mrs. Patterson's arms, the community that had once shunned her now embracing her completely. I want to remember this. Remember what? Being completely happy, Emma said simply. Samuel sat beside her, his hand finding hers. Are you completely happy? Aren't you? He considered watching their family, their friends, the life they'd built. You know I am. I didn't think I could be again after Mary, but this is different. Not better or worse, just different, complete in its own way. No regrets about marrying a desperate widow, Emma teased. Only that I didn't do it sooner, Samuel replied seriously. Though I suppose we both needed our journeys to get here. The baby came in November during the first serious snowstorm of the season. This time, Emma knew what to expect, and the labor was shorter, if not easier. Another girl with Emma's blonde hair and Samuel's gray eyes. What should we call her? Samuel asked, cradling the newborn with practiced ease. Hope, Emma said, without hesitation. Hope Mary Hayes. Samuel's eyes glistened. After Mary, she was part of your journey to me, Emma said, part of our story. And hope because, well, that's what she represents. Hope for our future. The girls were enchanted with their baby sister, fighting over who got to hold her, help with her bath, sing her to sleep. Jamie, now toddling everywhere, was less impressed, occasionally poking the baby and declaring no before running away giggling. Winter settled over the ranch like a heavy blanket, but inside the Hayes house, warmth prevailed. The new addition Samuel had built that autumn, 2 more bedrooms and an expanded kitchen, meant everyone had space, though they still tended to gather in the main room each evening. Tell the story again, Papa, Lucy requested one snowy night. About how you met Mama. It had become family legend, told and retold with small embellishments each time. Samuel's version focused on Emma's dignity and strength. Emma's version highlighted Samuel's unexpected kindness. The girls had their own version involving fate and destiny, and possibly fairy godmothers. I was sitting on the steps, Emma began, baby Hope nursing contentedly. You were hungry, Rose added, knowing her role in the telling. So hungry, Lucy agreed dramatically, and Papa saw you and knew. Knew what? Samuel played along. Knew you belonged together, the girls chorused. Is that how it happened? Emma asked Samuel, smiling. Close enough, he agreed. Though you forgot the part where your mama was too proud to accept help at first. And the part where Papa was too shy to just say he liked her, Emma added. I was not shy, Samuel protested. I was respectful. Shy, all 3 females said in unison, making Samuel throw up his hands in mock defeat. These were the moments Emma treasured most, not the dramatic rescues or grand gestures, but the quiet evenings filled with laughter and love, the ordinary magic of a family choosing to be together. Spring brought unexpected news. Jim, faithful Jim, who'd been with the Double H for nearly 20 years, was getting married. The bride was a widow from Billings, a woman with 2 young sons. I never thought I'd marry, Jim confessed to Samuel and Emma. Always figured I'd die a bachelor cowboy. But Martha, she makes me want more. You deserve happiness, Jim, Emma said warmly. Will you bring her to live here? If you'll have us. I know it's a lot taking on a woman and 2 boys. Family grows, Samuel said simply. We'll build another house close enough for community, but far enough for privacy. The wedding was held at the Double H that June, a simple ceremony in the flower-filled meadow behind the main house. Emma stood as matron of honor for Martha, who was nervous but radiant. The woman had been through her own trials, losing her husband in a mining accident, struggling to raise 2 boys alone. "Jim says you understand," Martha whispered to Emma before the ceremony, "about starting over, about second chances." "I do," Emma assured her. "And I can tell you sometimes the second chance is better than anything you could have imagined the first time." As she watched Jim and Martha exchange vows, Samuel beside her holding hope, while the other children fidgeted in their Sunday clothes, Emma reflected on the strange paths that had brought them all here. A desperate widow, a lonely widower, orphaned children, a bachelor cowboy. Another widow with sons all finding family in unexpected ways. The ranch thrived with the additional help. Tom Mitchell had grown into a capable hand under Samuel's guidance, and Sarah had become Emma's invaluable assistant in managing the expanding household. Martha's boys 8 and 10 joined Lucy and Rose in their adventures, forming a small gang that roamed the ranch like a pack of cheerful wolves. "We're becoming a small town ourselves," Samuel joked one evening, surveying the collection of buildings that now comprised the Double H, the main house, Jim and Martha's cabin, the bunkhouse for the single hands, 2 barns, various sheds, and coops. "A good town," Emma agreed. "One built on chosen family rather than mere proximity." That autumn brought a letter that shook Emma's carefully constructed peace. It was from her sister in Ohio, a sister she hadn't spoken to in 5 years, not since she'd left to follow Thomas West. "Eleanor's husband died," Emma told Samuel, reading the careful script. "She has 3 children and nowhere to go. Our parents are gone and she's asking—" Emma trailed off. "If she can come here," Samuel finished. Emma looked at him uncertainly. "It's a lot to ask. Another family to support, and Eleanor and I didn't part on good terms. She thought I was foolish to follow Thomas." "She was trying to protect you," Samuel pointed out. "And she wasn't entirely wrong, was she?" "No," Emma admitted. "But I had to make my own mistakes." "Then we offer her the same chance," Samuel said. "To make her own choices, but with family support this time." Eleanor arrived 6 weeks later with 3 children in tow, twin boys of 12 and a girl of 7. She was thinner than Emma remembered, worn down by loss and struggle, but the steel in her spine remained. "Emma," she said formally. Then her composure cracked. "I'm sorry for what I said when you left, for not writing when Thomas died, for everything." Emma embraced her sister, feeling years of resentment melt away. "We were both young and certain we knew best. Come inside. Meet your new family." Eleanor's integration wasn't seamless. She was proud, independent, unused to accepting help. But the children bonded immediately and slowly. Eleanor found her place in the expanding Hayes clan. She took over the ranch school, teaching all the children with the patience of someone who'd once dreamed of being a teacher before marriage redirected her life. "You've built something remarkable here," Eleanor told Emma one evening as they watched the combined children, 7 of them, now playing some elaborate game involving cowboys and dragons. "We've all built it," Emma corrected. "Every person here has added something essential. Even me, especially you. The children are learning so much with proper schooling, and Emma paused. "I needed my sister back. I didn't realize how much until you were here." Winter came early and harsh that year, but the Double H was prepared. The expanded community meant shared labor, the men keeping the cattle fed and safe, the women managing households and children, everyone contributing to the whole. It was during a particularly severe blizzard, when they were all trapped inside for 3 days, that Samuel made an announcement that stunned everyone. "I've been thinking," he said as they all gathered in the main house for dinner, a tradition when weather permitted, "about making this official." "Making what official?" Emma asked. "This." Samuel gestured to the assembled group, Emma and their children, Jim and Martha, and her boys Eleanor and her children Tom and Sarah Mitchell, the unmarried ranch hands. "We're already living as a community. Why not make it legal? Form a proper township. File the papers, elect officials, build a real school." "The town of Hayes," Jim suggested with a grin. "The town of second chances," Eleanor said softly. Everyone looked at her. Think about it, she continued. Every person here came looking for a second chance. Emma and Samuel Jim and Martha me the Mitchells. Even the children Lucy and Rose becoming sisters, my children finding new family, were all proof that second chances can work. Second Chances, Montana, Samuel said, testing the name. I like it. The idea took root over that long winter plans forming as the snow piled high. They would file for township recognition in the spring, build a proper schoolhouse, maybe even a small church for traveling preachers. Are you sure about this? Emma asked Samuel one night as they lay together, Hope sleeping between them, while a storm raged outside. It's a big change from the quiet ranch you built with Mary. Mary would have loved this, Samuel said with certainty. She always said the ranch felt too isolated, that people needed community. And you've given me that, Emma. You've given all of us that. We've given each other that, Emma corrected. As spring finally broke winter's hold, the plans moved forward. The territorial government approved their township application with surprising speed. Apparently, organized communities were exactly what Montana wanted to encourage. The first official town meeting of Second Chances was held in what would become the schoolhouse still under construction. Samuel was elected mayor by unanimous vote, Jim became sheriff, and Eleanor the school teacher. Emma, to her surprise, was voted town treasurer. You're the only one who can keep all our accounts straight, Martha pointed out. As Emma stood before the assembled townspeople, her family, her chosen family, her community, she thought about the desperate woman on those store steps less than 3 years ago. That woman could never have imagined this moment, this life, this joy. I want to say something, she said, and everyone quieted. 3 years ago, I thought my life was over. I was widowed, starving without hope. Then Samuel offered me a chance, not charity, but partnership. Everyone here has a similar story. We've all been broken. We've all been desperate, but we chose to rebuild together. She looked at Samuel, steady and strong, holding Jamie on his shoulders. At Lucy and Rose, inseparable sisters by choice. At baby Hope in Eleanor's arms. At all the faces that had become dear to her. Second Chances isn't just our town's name, she continued. It's our promise. To ourselves, to each other, to anyone who comes here seeking what we sought, a place to begin again. We're proof that the best families aren't always the ones you're born into. They're the ones you choose, the ones you build, the ones you fight for. The cheer that went up could probably be heard in Cedar Ridge 15 miles away. As Emma stepped down, Samuel caught her in his arms, spinning her as he had when she'd told him about Hope. Have I told you today that I love you? He asked. Only 3 times, Emma replied. You're slipping. Can't have that. He kissed her soundly, ignoring the whoops and hollers from their assembled family. I love you, Emma Hayes. Thank you for saving me. We saved each other. Emma said, the truth of it settling in her bones like coming home. That night, as the newly official town of Second Chances celebrated with an impromptu dance in the unfinished schoolhouse, Emma stood in the doorway watching the controlled chaos. Jim was teaching Eleanor's boys to fiddle. Martha and Sarah were organizing food with military precision. The children were racing around like wild things, drunk on excitement and possibility. Samuel appeared beside her as he always did when she needed him. Any regrets? He asked. About what? This. He gestured at the beautiful chaos. It's not the quiet life you might have wanted. Emma laughed. Samuel Hayes, I was a desperate widow with a starving child. I didn't dare want anything beyond the next meal. This, she gestured at their kingdom of second chances. This is so far beyond my wildest dreams, I don't have words for it. Try, he encouraged. Emma thought for a moment. It's like I was drowning and you threw me a rope. But instead of just pulling me to shore, you helped me build a boat. And then we invited everyone else who was drowning to climb aboard. And now we have a fleet. A fleet of second chances, Samuel mused. I like it. Papa, Mama. Lucy ran up, flushed with excitement. Rose and I want to make a sign for the town. Can we? What kind of sign? Emma asked. One that says, Second Chances where families are chosen and hope is real, Rose said, appearing beside her sister. Samuel and Emma exchanged glances, struck by the wisdom of their daughters. That's perfect, Emma said. Absolutely perfect. The sign went up 2 weeks later, carved by Tom Mitchell, who discovered an unexpected talent for woodworking. As Emma watched him and Samuel mounted at the entrance to their growing settlement, she felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with endings and everything to do with beginnings. But life, as Emma had learned, never stopped testing those who dared to build happiness from hardship. The test came in the form of a letter from a law firm in Denver, arriving on an unseasonably warm April morning when the entire community was preparing for spring planting. "What is it?" Eleanor asked, seeing Emma's face pale as she read. "Someone's contesting the land rights," Emma said numbly. "The whole township. They claim the original deed to the Double H was invalid, that Samuel never legally owned the land." Samuel took the letter, his jaw tightening as he read. "Harrison Blackwood. He's a land speculator from Denver known for finding technical flaws in deeds and stealing property." "Can he do that?" Martha asked. Baby Hope balanced on her hip while her boys pressed close, sensing the adult's distress. "He can try," Samuel said grimly, "and he has the money for good lawyers." The mood in Second Chances shifted from celebration to determination. They'd fought too hard for this life to let some paper-pushing speculator steal it. Emma immediately wrote to Charlotte in Chicago, hoping her connections might help. Samuel rode to Billings to consult with a lawyer. The entire community rallied, understanding that this threat was to all of them. The lawyer in Billings, a young man named David Hartley, reviewed the documents with growing concern. "There is an irregularity," he admitted to Samuel and Emma in his cluttered office. "The original transfer from Henderson to you, Samuel, the date is wrong. It shows the transfer happening 2 days after Henderson died." "That's impossible," Samuel protested. "I bought the ranch a month before he passed." "Do you have proof, the original documents?" Samuel's heart sank. "They were in the house. There was a fire the winter after Mary died. I lost most of the papers." Hartley leaned back thinking. "Without the original documents, it's your word against the official record. And Blackwood has deep pockets for bribing officials to support his version." Emma felt the familiar grip of desperation, the same feeling from those days on the store steps. But this time, she had weapons beyond mere survival instinct. "There must be witnesses, people who remember the sale." "Henderson was a loner," Samuel said. "The only person there was his lawyer, and he died last year." "What about the bank?" Emma suggested. "You must have withdrawn money for the purchase." Hope flickered in Samuel's eyes. "Yes, from the First National in Cedar Ridge. They'd have records." But when they visited the bank, they discovered those records had been mysteriously destroyed in a fire just 2 weeks prior, too convenient to be coincidence. Blackwood had been thorough. "He's been planning this," Emma said as they rode back to Second Chances, "destroying evidence, creating his false trail." "We won't give up," Samuel said firmly, but Emma heard the worry beneath his determination. The community gathered that evening in the schoolhouse, now complete with Eleanor's neat rows of desks and McGuffey readers. The children were sent to play outside, though Lucy and Rose, old enough to understand the gravity, lingered by the windows. "We fight," Jim said simply when Samuel explained the situation. "This is our home." "With what?" Tom Mitchell asked. "We don't have Blackwood's money or lawyers. We have truth," Eleanor said, though even she sounded uncertain. "Truth doesn't always win in court," Emma said quietly. "But maybe we're approaching this wrong. We're trying to fight Blackwood on his terms, legal technicalities, and paper trails. What if we fought on our terms instead?" "What do you mean?" Samuel asked. Emma stood, her mind racing with possibilities. "Blackwood is a businessman. He wants the land for profit, probably to sell to the railroad or mining companies. But what if the land wasn't profitable? What if owning it became more trouble than it was worth?" "You're thinking of something specific," Samuel observed, knowing his wife's expressions. "I'm thinking about Charlotte's late husband and how public pressure helped bring him down. Blackwood operates from Denver, far from here. He's counting on us being isolated, unknown. But what if we weren't? What if our story, the real story of Second Chances, became widely known? Eleanor caught on first, published in newspapers, a town built by widows and orphans threatened by a greedy speculator. Exactly. Emma's eyes sparked with determination. We can't match his money, but we can make his actions so public, so distasteful that continuing becomes bad business. They worked through the night crafting their strategy. Emma wrote letters to every newspaper editor she could think of telling the story of second chances. Eleanor, with her teacher's precise hand, made copies. Martha and Sarah prepared packages with photographs Jim had taken of the town, the children playing the new schoolhouse, families working together. But it was Lucy who provided the masterstroke. "Mama, she said the next morning. Remember when those reporters came through last summer, the ones writing about the New West?" Emma did remember. A pair of journalists from Harper's Weekly had stopped at the ranch, fascinated by the unusual community. They'd taken notes, but never published anything as far as Emma knew. "One of them gave me his card," Lucy continued, producing a creased rectangle from her treasure box. "He said if we ever had a story to write him." Emma hugged her daughter tightly. "Lucy Hayes, you brilliant girl." The reporter, William Ashford, responded to their telegram within days. He was intrigued enough to travel from Chicago, arriving with a photographer, just as Blackwood himself appeared in Second Chances, with his lawyers and a court order. Harrison Blackwood was everything Emma had expected, smooth polished with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. He rode into town in an expensive carriage flanked by 3 lawyers and several hired guns. "Mr. Hayes," he called out cheerfully as the community gathered, "I'm here to discuss the transition of property. I'm sure we can handle this civilly." "There's nothing to discuss," Samuel replied, standing firm on the schoolhouse steps. "This is our land, legally bought and paid for." "The courts say otherwise." Blackwood produced his court order with a flourish. "You have 30 days to vacate." "We won't be leaving," Emma said, stepping beside Samuel. Blackwood's gaze dismissed her entirely. "I wasn't addressing you, madam. This is business between men." "This is business between thieves and the people they're trying to rob," Emma shot back. "And I assure you, Mr. Blackwood, we're not as helpless as you assume." That's when William Ashford stepped forward, notebook in hand, photographer beside him. "Mr. Blackwood." William Ashford, Harper's Weekly. "I'm writing a story about the town of Second Chances. Would you care to comment on why you're trying to steal land from widows and orphans?" Blackwood's composure slipped. "I'm not stealing anything. I'm executing a legal claim. Based on documents that mysteriously appeared after evidence supporting Mr. Hayes' ownership was destroyed," Ashford continued smoothly. "Rather coincidental, wouldn't you say?" The photographer's camera flashed, capturing Blackwood's angry expression. Within minutes, the speculator was surrounded not just by citizens of Second Chances, but by the story they represented: Martha holding one of her boys' hands, Eleanor with her children, Emma with Hope in her arms, and Lucy and Rose pressed close. "This is private business," Blackwood sputtered. "Nothing about Second Chances is private," Samuel said. "We're a community. What affects one affects all. And Mr. Ashford here is going to make sure the whole country knows what kind of man tries to destroy families for profit." Blackwood retreated, but not before issuing a threat. 30 days Hayes. After that, the sheriff will enforce the eviction." "Let him try," Jim muttered, and the implied threat from the town's own sheriff carried weight. Ashford stayed for a week, interviewing everyone, documenting their stories. His photographer captured everything Eleanor teaching in the schoolhouse, the communal dinners, the children playing together, regardless of which family they'd been born into. "This is remarkable," Ashford told Emma one evening. "You've created something here that challenges everything society says about family and community." "We've created what we needed," Emma replied simply. "A place where broken people could become whole." The article, when it appeared 3 weeks later, exceeded their wildest hopes. Second Chances, a town born of courage, ran as the magazine's lead story, complete with photographs that brought tears to Emma's eyes. There was Samuel, strong and steady, surrounded by children. There was the whole community at dinner, faces glowing in lamplight. And there was the sign Lucy and Rose had suggested, declaring their truth to the world. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Letters poured in from across the country, some with donations, others with offers of legal help, many simply expressing support. A lawyer from Philadelphia, touched by the story, offered to represent them pro bono. A wealthy widow in Boston sent a bank draft for $1,000 to support those who understand that family is more than blood. But most importantly, reporters descended on Denver asking Harrison Blackwood uncomfortable questions about his business practices. Other victims of his schemes came forward. Within 2 weeks, he was under investigation for fraud, forgery, and bribery. He's withdrawing the claim, David Hartley informed them, barely containing his glee. His lawyers filed the papers this morning. Apparently the land isn't worth the complicated legal situation. The celebration that night rivaled the founding of the town itself. Music spilled from the schoolhouse, where Jim and his fiddle led dance after dance. Even Samuel, normally reserved at public gatherings, spun Emma until she was breathless with laughter. "We did it," she gasped, collapsing against his chest. "You did it," he corrected. "Your idea to fight with stories instead of guns saved us all." "Our story saved us," Emma insisted. "The truth of what we've built here." As the party continued around them, Lucy and Rose approached, faces serious despite the celebration. "Mama, Papa," Lucy began, "we've been thinking." "Dangerous," Samuel teased, but his eyes were warm. "Now that we're famous," Rose continued, "more people might come here. People like we were needing second chances." "That's likely," Emma agreed, curious where this was going. "So we think we should be ready," Lucy said. "Have places for them to stay, ways to help them start over, like a second chance system." Emma and Samuel exchanged glances, continually amazed by their daughter's wisdom. "What would you suggest?" Samuel asked seriously. The girls had clearly thought this through. They proposed building a guest house for new arrivals, creating a fund to help people get established, maybe even having a welcoming committee. "We could call it the Hope Fund," Rose suggested, after baby Hope, because she represents new beginnings. "And because hope is what people need most when they're starting over," Lucy added. That night, as Emma tucked the girls into bed, Lucy asked, "Are you proud of us, Mama Rose and me?" "Prouder than words can say," Emma assured her. "You've become remarkable young women." "We learn from you," Rose said sleepily. "You and Papa showed us how to be brave and kind at the same time." Emma's throat tightened with emotion. These girls who'd lost so much so young had grown into beacons of compassion and strength. She kissed them both goodnight and found Samuel waiting in the hallway. "The Hope Fund," he said softly. "Our daughters want to institutionalize kindness." "They're our daughters in every way that matters," Emma replied. "Of course they want to help others." As spring turned to summer, Second Chances adapted to its newfound fame. The article had indeed brought people seeking fresh starts: a widow from California with 4 children, a former soldier struggling with memories of war, a young couple ostracized from their community for marrying across racial lines. Each was welcomed, helped integrated into the growing tapestry of the town. The Hope Fund, managed by Emma with Lucy and Rose as official assistants, provided not just monetary support but practical help. Eleanor tutored adults who couldn't read. Martha taught women ranch skills. Jim and Tom helped men find work. It was a system born of understanding what desperate people actually needed, because everyone in Second Chances had been desperate once. One arrival particularly touched Emma's heart. A young woman named Beth arrived in late summer, heavily pregnant, and alone, her husband killed in a railroad accident. She had the same hollow look Emma remembered from her own reflection in those desperate days. "I read about your town," Beth whispered, exhausted from travel. "I have nowhere else to go." Emma settled her in the guest house now, complete with 4 small apartments for new arrivals. "You have somewhere now," she assured the frightened woman. "Second Chances is very real, and you're welcome here." Beth's baby came early on a night when storm clouds gathered but never quite broke. Emma and Martha attended the birth, Eleanor watching the other children, Sarah preparing supplies. It was Emma realized exactly how it should be, women supporting women through life's trials. "It's a girl," Martha announced as the baby's cries filled the night. "What will you name her?" Emma asked, helping Beth hold her daughter for the first time. "Grace," Beth said through tears, "because that's what this place has shown me." As autumn approached, bringing with it the anniversary of Emma's arrival at the Double H 3 years prior, Samuel surprised her with a proposal. "Not marriage," he clarified with a grin, "since we're already hitched. But I want to renew our vows, properly this time, with the whole town watching, saying the words we really mean, instead of the business-like arrangement we started with." Emma's eyes filled with tears. Samuel Hayes, are you getting romantic in your old age? Maybe, he admitted. Or maybe I just want the world to know that the desperate widow I married for practical reasons has become the love of my life. The ceremony was held on the exact date Emma had first come to the ranch as Samuel's wife. The entire town gathered in the meadow behind the main house, now bordered with flowers Eleanor and the children had planted. Lucy and Rose stood as witnesses. Jamie toddled around with rings tied to his wrist for safekeeping, and Hope slept in Martha's arms. 3 years ago, Samuel began having written his own vows. I offered a desperate woman a business arrangement. I thought I was saving her. I didn't realize she would save me right back. Emma, you brought light back into my life, love back into my home, and turned a lonely ranch into a thriving community. You've given me children, laughter, and a future I never dared imagine. I promise to love you not just as my wife, but as my partner, my equal, my heart's true home. Emma, who'd prepared remarks, found them inadequate. Instead, she spoke from her heart. Samuel, you offered me shelter when I had none, but you gave me so much more. You gave me dignity when the world would have stripped it away. You showed me that love could be steady and sure, built on respect and trust rather than just passion. You took my daughter as your own without hesitation, gave me more children to love, and helped me create a family beyond my wildest dreams. I love you not because you saved me, but because you saw me as worth saving when I couldn't see it myself. When they kissed, the cheer that went up could probably be heard in Cedar Ridge, but it was Lucy's words spoken during the celebration dinner that stayed with Emma longest. 3 years ago I was hungry and scared, Lucy said, standing on a chair to address the gathering. Mama was sad all the time, and I thought that was just how life would be. Then Papa, and he is my Papa, no matter what blood says, saw us and decided we were worth taking a chance on. And look what that chance became. She gestured around at the assembled crowd, the families and individuals who'd found home here. Every person here is proof that taking chances on people is always worth it. To second chances, Jim called out, raising his glass. To second chances. Everyone echoed. But Emma heard the capital letters, the town, and the concept intertwined. That night, as she and Samuel danced in their meadow, the stars bright overhead, and the sounds of continued celebration drifting from the schoolhouse, Emma thought about the woman she'd been and the woman she'd become. Do you ever think about how different life might have been? Samuel asked. If you hadn't been on those steps that day? Never, Emma said firmly, because thinking about that means imagining a world without this, without you, without our children, without our town. And that world, however easier it might have been, would be empty compared to this. Winter came early that year, but Second Chances was ready. The expanded community meant shared resources and labor. No one went hungry, no one faced the cold alone. The town had developed its own economy. Eleanor's school drew paying students from neighboring communities. Martha's preserved goods sold in Cedar Ridge. Tom's furniture was sought after throughout the county. It was during the deepest part of winter that Emma received news that would have once devastated her, but now only brought a sense of completion. Thomas's parents wrote that they'd discovered documents clearing his debts. Apparently he'd had a life insurance policy they'd known nothing about, one that more than covered what he owed. It means Lucy's trust can be even larger, Harold Caldwell wrote. But more importantly, it means Thomas's name is clear. He may have been impractical, but he tried to protect his family in the end. Emma shared the letter with Samuel, who read it thoughtfully. Does it change how you feel? Knowing he tried to provide. No, Emma said after consideration. I'm glad for Lucy's sake that her birth father wasn't as irresponsible as I'd thought. But it doesn't change our life here, what we've built. Thomas is the past. You're the present and future. Our future, Samuel corrected, pulling her close. As spring returned, bringing with it new growth and new arrivals seeking second chances, Emma stood on the hill overlooking the town they'd built. The schoolhouse was getting an addition. The guest house was full, but construction had begun on another. Children, so many children now, ran through the streets playing elaborate games. Gardens were being planted, cattle were calving, life was blooming everywhere she looked. Eleanor joined her on the hill, baby Grace, whom Beth had begged her to adopt when tuberculosis claimed the young mother in her arms. You did this, Eleanor said. This whole beautiful, impossible thing started with your courage. It started with desperation, Emma corrected, and Samuel's kindness. It started with choosing hope over fear, Eleanor insisted, with believing second chances were possible. Lucy and Rose ran up the hill now, 12 and 13, racing each other as always. Mama, Lucy panted, there's a new family at the guest house. They look scared. Then we better go welcome them, Emma said, taking her daughter's hands. As they walked down toward the town, Rose asked, Do you think we'll run out of room eventually for all the people who need second chances? Then we'll make more room, Emma said simply. That's what families do. They grow to hold everyone who needs holding. The new family was young, barely older than Emma had been when she'd sat on those store steps. The husband had lost his arm in a farming accident, making him unable to work most jobs. The wife held twin babies, exhaustion etched in every line of her face. Welcome to Second Chances, Emma said warmly. I'm Emma Hayes. This is my sister Eleanor, and these are my daughters Lucy and Rose. You're safe here. The woman burst into tears. They said, in the last town, they said no one would take us in, that a crippled man and his family were just burdens. The last town was wrong, Emma said firmly. Here, everyone contributes what they can. Everyone has value beyond their immediate usefulness. I don't know how we'll repay you, the man said, his voice thick. By helping the next desperate family that arrives, Samuel said, appearing with Jim and Tom to help with their meager belongings. That's how Second Chances works. We all pay it forward. That evening, as the community gathered for the weekly communal dinner, a tradition that had begun naturally and become sacred, Emma watched the new family slowly relax as they were surrounded by others who understood desperation and recovery. You're thinking deep thoughts, Samuel observed, sitting beside her with Hope on his lap, the toddler determinedly eating peas one by one. I'm thinking about circles, Emma said. How I was desperate and you helped me. Now we help others. Someday those we help will help still others. It spreads outward like ripples in a pond. The ripples of second chances. Samuel mused. I like that. A commotion at the door drew their attention. William Ashford, the reporter, had returned this time with several companions. Mrs. Hayes, Mr. Hayes. He greeted them warmly. I bring news. The story of second chances has inspired similar communities in 3 other states. They're calling it a movement, the Second Chances Movement. Communities built on mutual aid and chosen family rather than traditional structures. Emma was stunned. We never meant to start a movement. The best movements are never intentional, Ashford replied. They begin with someone doing what's right and others recognizing the truth in it. He'd brought copies of his latest article, which featured updates on second chances and profiles of the similar communities. There was even a photograph of the sign Lucy and Rose had suggested with the caption, "The motto that's changing America's frontier." We're famous, Lucy exclaimed, reading over Emma's shoulder. No, Samuel corrected gently. What we've built is famous. We're just the people who chose to build it. But fame brought challenges. More people arrived than they could easily absorb. Some came with expectations of easy charity rather than mutual support. A few came to gawk at the experimental community as if they were a traveling show. It was during a particularly tense town meeting about how to handle the influx that Quiet Rose, who usually let Lucy do the talking, stood up. We need rules, she said simply. Not harsh ones, but clear ones, about what second chances is and isn't. What do you suggest? Samuel asked, taking his daughter seriously as always. Rose had clearly thought this through. First, everyone contributes. Not the same things, but something. Second, everyone helps newcomers as they were helped. Third, no one's past matters more than their present choices. And fourth, she paused, looking at Lucy, who nodded encouragingly. Family isn't about blood or law. It's about choosing to stand together. The room was quiet for a moment, then Eleanor started clapping. Soon everyone was applauding, and Rose's rules, as they came to be known, were adopted unanimously. As summer reached its peak, Emma discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the news was greeted with celebration from the entire town. Bets were placed on gender names were suggested from every quarter, and Martha organized a rotating schedule to ensure Emma wouldn't overwork as the pregnancy progressed. "You've got an entire town's worth of mothers." Sarah laughed as yet another woman brought Emma food she hadn't asked for. "We all do," Emma replied, hand on her growing belly. "That's the beauty of it." The baby came with the first snow, another boy who Samuel insisted on naming after Jim, despite the older man's protests that he weren't worth naming nothing after. "You've been the backbone of this ranch and this town," Samuel said firmly. "James stood by us through everything. Our son would be honored to carry the name." Little Jim, as he was immediately dubbed, was passed from arm to arm at his first communal dinner, a child of the entire town. Lucy and Rose appointed themselves his special protectors, while Jamie and Hope regarded their new sibling with the skepticism of dethroned royalty. 5 years had passed since Emma had sat desperate on those store steps. 5 years that had transformed not just her life, but dozens of others. As she stood in the doorway of the schoolhouse watching the town's children rehearse for the Christmas pageant, a production that somehow involved both the nativity and what appeared to be cowboys, she felt Samuel's arms wrap around her from behind. "Any regrets?" he asked, echoing his question from years before. "Only one," Emma said. Samuel tensed. "What?" "That I can't go back and tell that desperate woman on the steps that everything would work out better than she could imagine." Samuel laughed, spinning her to face him. "Would she have believed you?" "Never," Emma admitted. She wouldn't have believed any of this was possible. "Mama, Papa," Lucy called from the stage. "Come see. We're at the part where the wise men meet the cattle drivers." "Historically accurate as always," Eleanor commented dryly, but her eyes were warm as she watched her students perform. As they settled in to watch the rehearsal, Emma looked around at the gathered families. Jim and Martha with their blended brood, Eleanor with her children and adopted Grace, Tom and Sarah Mitchell with their new baby. The former soldier, now the town blacksmith, laughing at something one of the children said. Beth's friend from California managing her 4 children while pregnant with a 5th. The interracial couple, their love now protected by the community's fierce loyalty. All of them broken once. All of them whole now, or at least healing. All of them proof that second chances weren't just possible but powerful enough to reshape the world, one desperate soul at a time. "You know what I've realized?" Emma said to Samuel as the pageant dissolved into chaos. "Angels chasing shepherds while wise men tried to lasso the star. What's that? We didn't just get second chances. We became second chances. For each other, for everyone who comes here. We're living proof that falling isn't the end of the story." Samuel kissed her temple. "It's just the beginning of a better chapter." The pageant eventually resumed with Lucy narrating a story that somehow wove together the birth of hope with the birth of their town. It was theologically questionable, but emotionally perfect, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house when the children sang Silent Night in harmony Eleanor had painstakingly taught them. That night, as snow began to fall in earnest, the families of second chances made their way to their homes. The main ranch house, the cabins, the apartments above the new general store Tom had opened. Lights glowed in windows, smoke rose from chimneys, and laughter echoed across the snowy streets. Emma stood on her porch one last time before bed, Samuel beside her, their children finally asleep after the excitement of the day. In the distance, she could see the sign Lucy and Rose had inspired now, weathered but still standing proud, second chances where families are chosen and hope is real. "It's true, you know," Samuel said, following her gaze. "Every word of it." "I know," Emma replied. "We're living proof." As they went inside, Emma paused at the parlor, where this journey had really begun. The room where Samuel had first shown her around, where she'd decided to stay, where they'd faced down Morrison, where they'd planned their town. Now it was filled with children's toys, Martha's quilts, Eleanor's books, evidence of the life they'd all built together. On the mantel sat a photograph Ashford's photographer had taken the entire town gathered for the summer harvest feast. Emma found herself in the center not because she'd positioned herself there, but because somehow she'd become the heart of this unlikely family. Samuel stood beside her, solid and sure. Their children surrounded them, both born and chosen, and spreading outward like those ripples she'd imagined were all the others who'd found home here. It wasn't the life she'd planned. When she'd married Thomas young and full of romantic dreams, she'd imagined a different future, simpler, perhaps more traditional, certainly. But that life had shattered, leaving her desperate and alone. From those broken pieces, though, had come something extraordinary. Not just survival, but triumph. Not just a second chance, but a multiplication of chances spreading outward, changing lives, building something that would outlast them all. "Coming to bed," Samuel called from upstairs. "In a moment," Emma replied, taking one last look at the photograph. The woman in that picture bore little resemblance to the desperate widow on the store steps. This woman stood tall, surrounded by love, radiating the quiet confidence that came from knowing she'd not just survived, but helped others survive too. This woman had taken the worst life could offer and transformed it into something beautiful. "Thank you," she whispered to God, to fate, to whatever force had put Samuel Hayes on that street that October morning. Then Emma Caldwell Hayes, former desperate widow, current pillar of a community built on hope, went upstairs to her husband, her children, her future. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new arrivals seeking help, new opportunities to extend the circle of second chances. But tonight, in the warm house filled with sleeping children, in the town built on chosen family, in the life constructed from desperation and determination, everything was exactly as it should be. The desperate widow had become the wealthy woman, not in money, though they had enough, but in the currency that truly mattered: love, purpose, community, and the knowledge that broken things could be rebuilt stronger than before. The story that had begun with hunger and fear had transformed into one of abundance and courage. And it was far from over. Each new dawn and second chances brought fresh possibilities. New chapters in the ever-expanding story of people who refused to let desperation have the last word. As Emma slipped into bed beside Samuel, he pulled her close, murmuring sleepily, "Love you, Mrs. Hayes?" "Love you back, Mr. Hayes," she replied, meaning it with every fiber of her being. Outside, snow continued to fall on second chances, blanketing the town in pristine white, a perfect metaphor for what they'd all been given: a clean slate, a fresh start, a second chance that had changed everything. And in the morning, when the sun rose over the mountains, it would illuminate not just a town, but a testament to the power of human resilience, the strength of chosen family, and the miraculous transformations possible when desperate people are met with kindness instead of judgment. The desperate widow's story had become legend, but more importantly, it had become inspiration. Every person who passed through second chances carried a piece of that story with them, spreading the radical idea that families could be chosen, that communities could be created, that second chances were not just possible, but sacred. In the warmth of her bed, surrounded by the quiet breathing of her family, Emma smiled. Tomorrow, Lucy would probably drag her into some new scheme. Rose would need help with the younger children's lessons. Jamie would attempt something dangerous that would turn her hair gray. Hope would demand stories. Little Jim would need feeding and changing and all the constant care infants required. Samuel would work with the cattle, consult with the town council, handle whatever crisis arose, because there was always something in a town full of people rebuilding their lives. Eleanor would teach, Martha would organize, Tom would build, Sarah would nurture. The entire beautiful, chaotic, chosen family of second chances would continue growing, thriving, proving daily that the best families weren't always the ones you were born into, but the ones you fought to create. And Emma would be in the middle of it all, no longer desperate, no longer alone, but still that same woman who'd refused to give up, even when giving up seemed the only option. She'd found her second chance, and she'd spent every day since making sure others found theirs too. It was, she thought, as sleep finally claimed her, a very good life indeed. The kind of life that proved sometimes the worst beginnings could lead to the best endings, that desperation could be the doorway to determination, and that a woman with nothing left to lose might just gain the whole world. The desperate widow had become so much more wife, mother, sister, leader, friend. But most importantly, she'd become herself fully and completely, no longer defined by loss, but by all she'd chosen to build from the ashes of her former life. And that more than anything else was the true miracle of second chances.